Can you guys hear me or see me? 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. 1 2. I guess the IFB is not working. I think. Oh yes, I can hear you guys now. Can you guys hear me? Hey, will somebody talk to me again, please? Cut through? Hey, Ivan? I was on it right now. I'll call again. Okay, bye.
What do they want us to do? Because we're getting far back.
I say we keep walking.
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep walking.
Do you want to call me? You said you have IFP now?
Well, I was, but then I haven't called me, so I had to hang up. And now I'm trying to call again, but now they're not picking up.
Okay. I'm trying to get up. I don't want to get too far back.
Hey Dan, can you have him reset IFB because nobody's picking up anymore? Hey Josh, nobody's picking up IFB and I need to call in, and I'm trying to call in. Yeah. I did. It just rings and rings. I was on it, but then I had to hang up to pick up on Ivan, and I'm trying to call in again, but nobody picks up. Can you just let somebody know to please pick up IFB? Thank you. Okay, bye. Okay, bye. They're not picking up IFB. I'm calling it like crazy.
I think that's something we got to bring up. Always been an issue.
Can you guys hear me? Hello? Yes, I can hear you now. Okay. Stand in front of the camera so they know they can hear me. Can you guys see me, hear me? Phone, mic. We good? Show. Okay, show them the crowd and be ready to be live talking. I'm gonna three-way call Carlos. Okay, Carlos, what's your number?
Actually, just talking on the thing right now. Well, okay, you want to do it right here?
Yeah.
Okay, stand right there in the sun.
Yeah, let's just take a breath. We'll be okay.
Okay, stand right there.
Okay. To make, what's your phone number? 602.
5993.
Okay, so Matt says to shoot as if we're live the entire time because it's likely that that will
try to hold the camera for that long. Okay.
Carlos, let me help you with your other phone.
Okay.
Okay?
I should hear anything?
I just merged you, and I'm going to mute both of my phones.
Is underway, and and we have ground crews and air crews established to bring you the very best coverage of this big moment for education in our state, perhaps a watershed moment for education in our state. Let's go to some of our live coverage, and we'll show you what we're talking about. As thousands of teachers have taken to the streets, you can see it is a sea of red.
Sky 12 showing you right there that huge, massive movement from tens of thousands of teachers for this Red for Ed movement. We're talking teachers, supporters, the community, anybody who is supporting this teacher movement for higher salaries. What you are witnessing today is completely unprecedented in Arizona history. This has never before happened on this large of a scale, as we show you from the ground here. All of these people coming together in support of higher pay for education. They're asking for a number of things, including 20% teacher pay raises, competitive pay for support staff, restore state education funding to 2008 levels, create permanent salary structures that include annual raises, and no new tax cuts until per pupil funding reaches the national average. We have live team coverage all across the board, from Sky 12 raises and no new tax cuts until per pupil funding reaches the national average. We have live team coverage all across the board, from Sky 12 down to the floor here. We've got Charlie Edsity, Antonia Mejia, and Joe Dana giving you the best live team coverage we can give you.
I also want to mention that Governor Doug Ducey will be joining us live in studio in just a few minutes, so we invite you to stay with us as he joins us to give us his views on the teacher situation, the Red for Ed movement, and if there can be a quick resolution to this walkout, which affects so many people all across the state of Arizona. We also have Superintendent Diane Douglas with us. We'll talk to her in just a few minutes about the state of education in Arizona. This is the route that the teachers and the support staff and the parents and the students are taking. They started at Chase Field this morning. They will make their way to the state capitol, where we will carry their rally live for you. Right now, let's go to Charlie Edsity, who is in the midst of that sea of red. She's been following the marchers all morning. Charlie, what are you hearing from them?
Well, Mark, like you said, it's a sea of red. We're standing here off the corner of 4th Street and Jackson. Take a look. Let me show you what's happening out here. All you can see are folks out here, a sea of red, a sea of posters, people coming together for this Red for Ed march. As you guys were saying, a very historic event. Something like this has not been seen in Arizona, I don't think, ever. It is incredible to be out here right now. Now, we've been speaking with several teachers throughout the hour and a half that we have been out here. We have watched this crowd grow enormously since we have been out here. And the resounding message from these teachers, these educators, these supporters of this movement is that they want their voices heard. And yes, they're out here shouting and chanting and doing that. And so some of the biggest message that I got from speaking with several teachers out here was that this is not about them. It's not about their pocketbook. It's not about their bank account. It is about their students, their children, the kids who are in Arizona's public school system. They want to ensure that the future of Arizona's education is in good hands. And so this is what it's all about, according to these teachers. They want to make it clear it's not about them. It's not about their salary. As you just listed off, there were several points that they want to get across to Governor Ducey that they are asking for. And so it is just incredible. They are now starting to move westbound on Jackson. And so we are told that the route that this march is going to take is they're going to head several blocks west on Jackson. They're going to go north on 3rd Avenue for a few blocks and then swing again westbound on Washington. And they're going to go several blocks west on Washington. That's going to lead them all the way up to the Capitol, where they do plan to rally. And so the leader of the Arizona Educational Association held a press conference yesterday. He's demanding some kind of meeting with Governor Ducey to talk about how they can come together, how they can compromise, and also get their voices heard. And, you know, a lot of the folks out here, everybody out here is in support of that conversation that will hopefully put an end to this. And, you know, just asking the teachers about the feel on their campuses yesterday, as we all knew what was coming, was about to happen, the walkout, you know, they were saying that they were feeling a lot of support. They were feeling very supported by their students, parents, fellow staff members in walking out and not showing up to class today. And they said that that's been a key part in what has kept them going with this movement this entire time, is the feeling of support coming from the community. And you can see just by the massive size of this crowd that there is so much support happening here for what these teachers and educators are asking for. And so, Mark and Tram, it is pretty phenomenal to be out here right now. Again, never seen something like this before. Several thousands of people have been coming through here. You can see, you know, just people going every which way trying to get in line here, and as they start to march westbound on Jackson Street.
And Charlie, before we let you go, because we have reporters all over the march route, I'm wondering, look, this is the first hours of this movement. Do the teachers and the support staff and the people that you've talked to, do they seem determined that if this goes on, they're willing to hold the line and to stay out for a protracted period of time?
You know, that's a very tricky question that some teachers are a little unsure about, because at the end of the day, this is about the students. Those are the people that they really want to benefit from what is happening. And so, you know, there has been a lot of opposition to what's happening right now with this walkout. A lot of people, critics, saying that these teachers need to be in the classroom serving the students, and that being out of the classroom is not servicing them. So the teachers I spoke to said that they're very passionate about both sides of the issue. They want to be there for their students, but they also believe that what they're doing out here right now is to the benefit of the students. And so it's unclear at this point. Nobody really wanting to give any concrete answers, just waiting to see what shakes out at the Capitol with our lawmakers and Governor Ducey.
Yeah, you see a lot of those signs that speak to what you are saying, Charlie. One of them saying, I am here for my students. We should also mention that this movement, it all started at Chase Field. That's where many of these people started gathering at 10 o'clock this morning, even as early as 8 a.m. as they make their way down over to the state capitol, roughly about a 2-mile walk. Right now, we continue our live team coverage with Antonia Mejia. Antonia, where exactly are you and what are you seeing?
Tram, so we are right on Washington Street. Large crowd of Red for Ed supporters here. I'll tell you guys this much, the momentum out here is strong, and it's really just an incredible amount of parents, teachers, staff members, students and children out here as well, and they have all just been approaching us with their signs, really just staying spirited and strong with their cause and everything they have to just, you know, state a purpose out here for. But we are, again, on Washington Street, right near 7th Ave, right by Phoenix Police Headquarters. Our photojournalist Carla Chavez right now is showing us images of all of these supporters marching along Washington Street here, and really just, like I was saying, they are so spirited right now. They are marching, and just a lot of high energy and cheers out here with all sorts of signs. So lots of going on out here. I do think we're farther up from where Charlie was at. We started the race, or I'm sorry, the march out here at around 10:48. We were at the beginning, and we've kind of just been trickling back, getting shots of all of the people out here and just walking along with them as they make their way towards the state capitol.
All right. Thanks, Antonia. We want to continue our coverage now. Let's go to Joe Dana, who is standing by at the state capitol. And Joe, I'm wondering, there have been some rumblings that the governor is working on something right now. Are you hearing anything?
We are hearing that, Mark. You know, it's not as colorful, it's not as loud, it's not as visual, but the real action taking place in all this is happening inside the buildings behind me, especially the governor's office. We understand that he continues to meet with legislative leadership, especially from the Republican Party, to try to get the numbers. In the end, this is a numbers game. You're talking about 16 and 31. Those are the numbers he needs from each side to say they're on board with his 20 by 2020 plan, even though economists have said there are some concerns about whether it's mathematically possible, because so much of his plan relies on projected revenues. Some say rosy, overly optimistic revenues. They say, look, this isn't sustainable and it doesn't address the entire picture of what schools really need. It's not just about teacher raises. Joining me is Rebecca Rios, minority leader in the House. You've been around a long time. How do you sum up sort of what's taking place right now with this impending protest about to hit this Capitol in an hour or two?
I think you're seeing the results of decades of underfunding of public education by Republican governors and Republican legislatures. I think were it not for the teachers finally standing up for themselves, standing up for their children, this would not be happening, and that governor would not be up there twisting arms trying to get even his own party to agree with a plan that is not sustainable. At the end of the day, he can't even get his own members on board, although he's trying very hard, because again, we're relying on rosy projections that are just not going to pan out. We're also doing something that's truly only going to get us through this next election cycle without any guarantee that we are going to continue to work at funding back the $1 billion that has been cut from public education since 2008.
What are the chances you think he'll hold a news conference today or tomorrow to say, we've got the votes we need, we're going to pass this thing?
Oh, I fully expect him to twist Republican arms, to get them on board, to vote for his unsustainable plan. But the fact of the matter is, it's not going to address decades of underfunding of public education. He's addressing one sliver, a small percentage for teacher pay increases, nothing with regard to capital improvements, books. I mean, teachers are still going to be teaching classrooms of 35 kids. His plan does nothing to address that.
To be fair, he's putting in $100 million of additional funds that do go to capital funding. And the next year it would be even more. So there are steps planned to gradually start to replenish some of those budgets to get schools back in line with the repairs and the buses and everything else. Governors all along said, we need you to be patient. It's happening slowly. What would you say to that?
What I would say to that is this is the same governor that cut $116 million of direct additional assistance, what he now wants to be hero for and saying, I'll give $100 million back. Look at the guy's record. He is not the education governor. He is simply putting back a portion of what he cut the first year he was in office.
So last thing here, politically, if you look at this, and if the governor can get enough on board in the next day or two to try to quell all of this, the other question is, will there be a ballot initiative proposed? What are you hearing on that front? Because that would sort of be the response.
Absolutely. What I'm hearing is that Arizonans are tired of the inaction, that Arizonans are taking it into their own hands to put forward a ballot measure that will truly seek to repay back public education with a sustainable funding source. And if that happens, I would fully expect that teachers and others would be on board. We need more, much, much more than what the governor is offering.
Okay, so first things first, governor trying to get the political will here to pass his plan to take away some of the oomph of the protests happening here and, of course, the strike that begins today. I spoke to one school counselor just a little bit ago. She was here and said, I have 700 students assigned to me. You know, this is a state that has the worst counselor to student ratio in the country. She said, I have not enough time in the day to address their needs, many of them psychological and emotional needs. There are a lot of stories here. It's not just about teacher pay. It's about funding schools in other ways and getting those funding levels back to 2008 levels. Guys?
All right, Joe Dana, thank you. We'll get back to you in just a couple of minutes. I want to remind our viewers that Governor Ducey will join us. Governor Ducey, by the way, who has been receiving the slings and arrows of this large crowd in downtown Phoenix today, marching for more dollars, marching for better education, marching for a better quality of education for the students of Arizona. The governor will join us live in studio in just a few minutes.
And we continue our live team coverage on Walkout Watch. Right now with us, we have Diane Douglas, State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Ms. Douglas, you have said from the beginning that this walkout has been premature, that these teachers should not walk out, that this is the wrong approach, it is unlawful. That obviously has fallen on deaf ears when you see the video from Sky 12 showing the tens of thousands of teachers making their mark, making this movement that has been unprecedented from Chase Field to the state capitol to make their voices heard to the governor. When you see that, obviously what you said fell on deaf ears. What are your thoughts as you see this movement?
Quite honestly, while I have long been an advocate since I came into office for increased teacher pay and for additional funding for our schools, this is a sad day for Arizona, because while they are making a statement, unfortunately, it's our children who will pay the price for it, and I support first and foremost our children and families.
Ms. Douglas, from where you sit, though, you moved out here from New Jersey. so that your child could go through an Arizona public education. But $1 billion has been cut since 2008. That can't ring well with you as the director of public education.
Well, what we need is a sustainable funding source for education. As we look around the West, as we look towards back east, we see that they have different mechanisms in place. Many states in the West use excise taxes. Back east, they own virtually all of their state land in order to help support their schools. We have some very specific deficits in Arizona, and that's what I've been talking about for over 3 years now. How do we look to ways to support our education system, specifically for our education system?
But as someone whose job it is to make sure that the kids of Arizona receive a quality education, how do you reconcile the fact that this legislature has cut and cut and cut from the education budget over the years?
Well, let's defending no one way or the other. I mean, the reality is we went through a recession, and Arizona was the state that was hardest hit, arguably, by that recession. It takes time, but I still think even through that, we look at some of the ways that we fund education in Arizona through our general fund, through sales tax, although I admit I had a plan and was a proponent for increasing our sales tax just a little bit. We have, for lack of a better word, I'd say many of our funding sources for this are very volatile ones based on the economy. I think we need to find a better way to do it.
So tell us where you stand with the governor. Are you for or against his proposal of 20% by 2020?
I certainly hope for our teachers that they're able to work that through. It does need to be viable, and I think they are explaining. Unfortunately, the wheels of government do grind slowly, and it takes time. That's why I had hoped that we would let it work through a little bit before we came to today. But I hoped we never came to today.
But do you, as you look at these teachers, this massive movement in downtown, do you see where the teachers are coming from? Do you sense their frustration, and do you understand their frustration?
I always have. Since I've been in office, I created what we call the We Are Listening Tours. I've conducted almost 60 town halls all across Arizona. What I learned from that is overwhelmingly Arizonans support their teachers, and they want to see their teachers paid better. And I've been an advocate for that with different ideas and plans and how do we get this discussion moving as long as I've been in office. But I think they need to be in the classroom with children. If we got to a point where nothing was resolved and nothing was worked out, then arguably could this be a strategy, but not at this point in time. My heart and my prayers are with, we have special ed students, we have English language learning students, we have even what we call our gen ed students. They may be irreparably damaged if this goes on and on and on. And first and foremost to me, I'm with our students and our families.
And the teachers say that they are with their students as well. I mean, this is very painful for them to walk out, but they have to think about their livelihoods as well. But I want to get to you. You say you understand the teachers when you see this video of them making this huge march to the Capitol. You've said before that there could be repercussions for this walkout. You've called this walkout illegal. You've warned that teachers could be taking a risk by walking off their jobs, that they could possibly be resigning their position. When you see these teachers do this, do you still feel that way?
Unfortunately, there are repercussions for actions. Strikes are illegal in Arizona. Our teachers cannot strike. And my duty at the department is if a parent or the State Board of Ed or a citizen or whomever files a complaint against a teacher because of what they've done, and not just because of this, whatever the actions may be. Our duty at the department is to investigate. We make a report to what's called the PPAC. We have lots of acronyms in education, the Professional Practices Advisory Committee, and ultimately it goes to the state board. My duties and responsibilities do not change with the size of the crowd.
Okay, but here's the thing. You already have, the state of Arizona already has a low number of teachers to begin with. The turnover rate is honestly ridiculous. It's very, very high. So you're willing to possibly strip some of these teachers of their certificate?
I would not be doing it, number one. My responsibility is to investigate any and all complaints that come against a teacher.
When you see tens of thousands of teachers marching out like that, you would be, I mean, the board would be willing to possibly strip their certificate?
I cannot speak to what the board could do. The repercussions could be anywhere from nothing all the way through to a letter of censure, which they routinely do to teachers who walk off the job, to potentially suspension or revocation. I certainly hope it wouldn't come to that. That's why I have been encouraging our teachers to stay on the job while the governor and the legislature work through a very viable offer to our teachers. But their duty first and foremost is to the children we serve.
But it's too little too late. I mean, you see them walking. That could cripple Arizona's education.
With all due respect, in my opinion, the vote that was taken last week was improper and wrong. At that point in time, there was a 20% salary increase on the table. The vote should have been, do we want to move forward with that and take a 20%, consider a 20% salary increase?
But in all fairness, and I understand what you're saying, but it was on the table, it wasn't done. There was no mechanism to fund that 20% at that point.
But we've seen as the week has gone on, we're getting closer and closer to that end. And once again, this is hurting our children, and they will always be first.
All right, before we let you go, I want to ask you about when this starts eating into the summer vacation, because a lot of families have planned summertime. When do you start having to make up for school days or hours?
They arguably may need to make up for this day. There's a number of days that have to be met, and there are instructional hours that have to be met. So that will depend on how long this lasts, how all this plays out. We've had advice or information on our website for all the different areas, whether it's special ed students, whether it's food, health and nutrition for food services for children, and even some information for our school districts on the funding. That's our piece to play in this, to make sure everyone has the information that they need.
When you retire, you're going to want to have your legacy, I would think, be very positive, and that Arizona has come up from the depths of teacher pay, per pupil spending, things like that. Are you confident or optimistic at this point that before you leave office, the teachers will get the money that they deserve and want, and that we can raise Arizona up from the depths of the ocean?
We already are. We're seeing increases in our schools, in their academic achievement. Clearly, the issue of teacher pay is being addressed. Again, for me, an important piece of it is that it's sustainable and that we can make sure that we can do it in a way that doesn't harm future generations of children also. That's very important to me, but we have to make sure that we provide the services for our children so that they have the potential for great futures also.
All right, State Superintendent Diane Douglas, we really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming into our studios and talking about this very important issue.
And if I just might add, one of the things we have seen through this is our communities, our faith-based communities, stepping up and helping our students. And that, where this overall is a sad day for me for Arizona, to see our community come together like that speaks loudly.
And in the end, despite the problems with education, it is a great place to live, Arizona. And I think that all of us, no matter where you're coming from, want to see our kids and our teachers, the people that affect our children, benefit and at the end get what they deserve.
I wouldn't have raised my daughter anywhere else, and now we have a grandson, and proudly we'll have him go through Arizona schools also.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
I hope this is the beginning of something positive for everyone. Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
Well, we want to remind you once again that Governor Doug Ducey, he is just minutes away. He will be live with us in our 12 News studios. We will be talking to him shortly. But right now, we want to go straight to Team 12. Brian West, who is standing by in our social media. And Brian, as you can imagine, this whole movement, a lot of it started online through Facebook, through Twitter to get the word out. What are you seeing?
That's exactly right, Tram. And what I can tell you is that people are flooding social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook with a lot of pictures, a lot of selfies from down there on the ground. But I want to get first to, we have Governor Doug Ducey coming in. He's been very active on Twitter. So he's said, we've all been listening, but now it's time to act. My #1 focus right now is passing a 20% pay raise for Arizona teachers. This raise is earned and it is deserved. He also said to parents, I understand the pain and pressure caused by today's strike. I'm working to get that 20% raise passed. But as I said, a lot of pictures, a lot of videos of that sea of red that we're seeing all the way from Chase Field to the Capitol. We see a lot of signs, a lot of #RedForEd. We deserve more. I mean, we are talking thousands. People were packed outside of the baseball stadium, packed throughout downtown Phoenix, even packed on the light rail. If you go anywhere in downtown Phoenix right now, you will just see everybody is wearing red. A lot of videos. We encourage all of you to send your pictures and your videos too, your opinions about this entire movement that's happening. Use the hashtag either 12 News or #Beyond12. We're going to continue to monitor this. We also have a feature for Snapchat, so if you are on that social media, you can use that as well. Mark, Tram.
Brian, I'm wondering, are you seeing anything against the teachers, against the protesters?
As of right now, we haven't seen a lot of tweets about people being against them. We've mostly been flooded with those pictures. We're waiting to see if that happens, but right now it's more about this walk that is happening. In the days leading up to right now, we have seen a lot of back and forth, especially from not only political leaders, but parents and teachers as well.
All right, Brian West, following social media, which is such a big component of this, people weighing in, and be sure and do that, and we'll be checking back with Brian throughout our coverage. Once again, if you're just tuning in, we are following this huge day in education for Arizona. The Red for Ed movement, teachers, students, educators, support staff have all, parents too, have all taken to the streets of downtown Phoenix. Tens of thousands of people slowly but surely making their way to the state capitol.
And you know what, Mark, this is not just pertaining to the state capitol here. It's not isolated to that area. It is all throughout the valley. I can tell you on my way into work today, as I was passing on the corner of Deer Valley and Tatum, there were a number of teachers and supporters on the corners rallying, encouraging people to honk their horns. We're showing you a map right here of this huge movement from Chase Field to the state capitol, roughly about 2 miles. They gathered as early as 8 o'clock this morning, and they're making their way down to the state capitol as we speak. But again, going back to what I was saying, I saw another group of people also gathered on the corner of Cactus and Tatum. And not only were they teachers and supporters, there were also some kids there. And as we know, sadly, the ripple effect of this whole Red for Ed movement, the students, everybody cares about the students. Everybody cares about the kids. That's the big problem here, is what are they left to do as their teachers are walking out? Many people calling this a strike.
Well, whether you want to call it a strike or a walkout, it is a work stoppage, and the collateral damage in many cases, not in all, is that there will be kids who unfortunately will fall through the cracks when it comes to being fed a breakfast and a hot lunch that they receive at school. And one of the things that Superintendent Douglas said that I think rings very true, and that is, despite all of this, the great sense of community out there for some schools staying open, the religious community staying open and offering food and a shelter and a place to go for these children who are caught in the middle of this tug of war over funding for education.
Yeah, it really breaks your heart. You know, it breaks your heart not just thinking about the kids, where they are going, where they are being left. Also for the teachers, they're fighting for their own livelihood here as we see this massive, massive sea of red. You know, you were talking about this huge community movement itself in helping these children. You see the Arizona Science Center. They're putting together camps. They're putting together free programs to keep these kids busy. St. Mary's Food Bank, the Boys and Girls Club, a number of churches, a number of organizations. I even got an email from the Phoenix Zoo that kids can go in for free. You know, it's all these little entities, these little parts of this moving cycle here, that where people are coming together, and that is truly the silver lining. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's so unprecedented when you see that long line of just red as they make their way down the Capitol. We have never, ever seen anything like this.
No, and I think it really speaks to the heartbeat of this state when you talk about that big number, $1 billion cut from education funding. I think all of these people are saying in unison, enough is enough.
Right. They've had enough.
We have to make our stand right here, right now, today.
Exactly. I mean, you're talking about classroom sizes that are well over 30, 35 easily. There's not enough desks. There's not enough supplies. These teachers alone, I mean, you just take aside, put aside the whole classroom crisis that's happening. These teachers alone, they are barely getting by with the salaries that they have, where they haven't gotten a raise. And this whole notion of 20 by 20, it hasn't been passed yet. This is still a proposal. So when people say, oh, you know what, these teachers, they're going to get their 20% raises by 2020, that is not a done deal yet.
No, the legislature
still has to
would
be
have
voted
to
on.
approve that.
Yes.
And in the end, you have to believe that this is going to wind up being some sort of an initiative to raise taxes. And I think based on the polling that we have seen, that a vast majority of people would approve that.
Right. We've asked people through our 12 News poll daily that would you approve a 1% sales tax that would go to education funding? And overwhelmingly, we're talking more than 70% of our viewers who voted online, they said yes, we would absolutely do this 1% tax increase.
Yeah, This is if you're watching today on 12 News, we appreciate it, but this is a huge moment. This is a historical moment, a moment when you will remember that you watched this galvanized movement of people saying, it is time for us to stand up for our teachers and our teachers and our students and our families, because $1 billion cut, when you look at the stats and per pupil spending and the quality of education, it's no longer acceptable that Arizona is at or near the bottom in all of those categories, from teacher pay on up.
And it's a ripple effect from teacher pay to education, sadly. And, let's put this whole vision right here in context. We are not just isolating this to the city of Phoenix, to the state of Arizona. This is also happening in other states. If you'll remember back in February, this whole grassroots movement, Red for Ed, started in West Virginia, and then it spread to Kentucky, and then it spread to Oklahoma. Today, as we are seeing this is also happening in Denver, Colorado. So this is a nationwide movement. It's not just an Arizona problem.
Right. So let's stay on the shot, but the next voice you hear will be Governor Ducey, who has joined us in studio. And Governor, as you look at this, what do you feel? What are you seeing?
Well, I am here to help the teachers. I just came from the state capitol. I'm meeting with legislators and saying it's time to pass this pay raise. We've proposed a 20% pay increase for our teachers by 2020. We also have additional money for support staff, counselors, crossing guards, other folks that are inside these schools. We've got a growing economy here in the state of Arizona. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. We have confidence that we have the dollars available. So I want to answer the question for these teachers and get these pay raises passed.
Are you confident or pessimistic that something can be done to get the kids back in school by Monday?
I'm confident that something can be done, but this is a call to leadership and it is a call to action. That's why I've been dealing directly with legislative leadership, Republicans and Democrats. I don't think this is a partisan issue, and saying let's solve this issue, let's answer this for our teachers, for the people inside our schools, and for our citizens. I'm concerned when there is a teacher strike. These kids are out of school, parents are working, they have to bring a child with them or find daycare, and many of these kids eat breakfast and lunch at school as well, so that's top of mind for me.
Yeah, and I mentioned mentioned the term collateral damage in all of this, and ultimately I think everyone's intentions are good. The teachers' intentions are good, but they deserve more pay. Your intentions are good, but you need the approval of the legislature in a sustainable manner so that the teachers can get the money that you want to get them.
Yes, absolutely. The teachers have earned this pay raise. We are getting good results inside of our schools. Our kids are leading the nation in math and reading. So I know people like to talk about funding statistics, and we do need to address those. But in terms of a child being able to have access to an excellent education in the state of Arizona, we have that available. We need to improve it. It's not perfect. We're making real progress, but the teachers have earned this pay raise. I'm calling on the legislature to work together to get this passed. I want to answer this question for the teachers as soon as possible.
Okay, what about this whole 1% sales tax increase? That we've talked about that a lot. We've heard from our viewers from 12 News. They said that they would be in support of that. A number of people would. Would you increase the sales tax by 1% to generate, basically you need $1 billion.
So when somebody's talking about a tax increase, they're talking about that they need more funds. Now, I think you saw the CBO report and the FAC report that's been validated by Moody's and the Seidman Institute at Arizona State and the Eller School of Management, that the forecast that we're putting out right now that would allow us to give teachers in Arizona a 20% pay increase by 2020, along with $100 million in additional assistance. And to simplify that, that's the support staffs, the counselors, the other people inside the school that need money as well, with flexibility for the superintendents to apply it where necessary, textbooks, school buses, those types of things. We have those dollars available. The reason we have those dollars available, Tram, is because our economy is booming here in the state of Arizona. We're one of the fastest growing states in the nation. Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the country. Californians are coming here to live. I say often we're Chicago's favorite suburb. It's because we have a great quality of life here. It's very affordable. So I don't want to stop that, and I believe that a tax increase would send a message that Arizona isn't open for business like it has been. Now, I might be in a different spot if I were not able to apply these funds to our teachers, to the most pressing needs in our state government. But because our economy is growing, I do have those funds available. That's why I'm calling on the legislature in a very responsible and sustainable budget to put these funds forward so the teachers can count on them.
But Governor, all due respect, you, in a certain respect, your hands are tied because you need this legislature to approve your plan. And it has been a contrarian legislature when it comes to endorsing education, $1 billion cut. Those are hard numbers.
Well, since I came into office, which is what I'll be held accountable for, we've put $1.7 billion additional dollars into K-12 education. We've increased per pupil spending 10%. We've increased the amount of dollars that are available for teacher pay and teacher raises 9%, and now I'm proposing a 20% pay increase by 2020. So I don't see my hands as tied. I'm going to persuade and influence this legislature to pass this bill. I've let them know that's the budget I intend to sign, and if citizens agree with me, they should go to azleg.gov, find out who their legislator is, and tell them to pass the governor's teacher pay proposal plan.
How confident are you in the hammer that you can hold over their head?
I am confident. We had a lot of meetings late night last night. I would have loved to come in this morning and say, we have a deal. We're getting closer. We're working through the process, but I have a sense of urgency. It is time to act. I'm ready to sign that budget right now. So I came in here because I wanted to communicate what's happening here and what's happening at the state capitol, but I'm going to head back to work, and we're going to get this done.
You know, a lot of people think that, okay, the promises, they're just words. Today, you're saying that you have been working at it, but a lot of people, including Joe Thomas, the Arizona Education Association president, he has said that every educator wishes this did not have to happen. This right here, what you are seeing, the tens of thousands right in your front yard right here, nothing has worked. He said that phone calls, emails, letters.
Untrue. That's untrue. And these aren't just words. $1.7 billion is more than just words. A 10% increase in per student spending is more than just words. The 4% raise last year and a 20% increase that will be permanent, ongoing, and in the base. The teachers will have this raise, and they will be able to count on this raise once we pass this in the budget. But they are much more than just words. This is action and results for our teachers. They've earned it.
Governor, we're hearing that there may be, the legislature may push for a 4-year plan instead of a 3-year plan. Can you talk about that?
Well, I am open-minded, and I will be flexible. I've said to many legislators, the last thing I want to appear is to be imperial or inflexible here. But what I'm not going to budge on is a teacher pay increase and additional dollars for support staff. This is a real issue we need to solve. You're in elective office for a reason. It's time to move on this budget.
But that would mean that it wouldn't be 20 by 2020. It would be 20 by 21.
These are hypotheticals, and what I want to deliver on, what I've committed to, is 20% pay increase by the year 2020.
So you would not budge on that?
This is what I'm committed to.
And what about sitting down with Joe Thomas and those folks? They keep saying on our air that you won't sit down with them.
I've sat down with and listened to a lot of teachers, and a lot of teachers inside the Red for Ed movement. I've sat down with our superintendents, and I've been listening to what they're saying. Now I think it's time to sit down with people that can actually affect the outcome, to address teacher pay, to address support staff, to address per pupil spending. That's what I'm acting on, and hopefully the next time I'm here I can tell you what the result is.
But wouldn't it make sense to sit down with the Joe Thomases of the world and say, look, spell out exactly what you want and let me take your message to the legislature. Let's try to work together and let's get the teachers and the students back in school.
I'm here for the teachers and the kids inside the classroom. Those are the people that I've been listening to. I know how to address spending, and I know how to pass a state budget. We've done 3. They've been fiscally responsible, and our economy has been growing, and it's put us in a position where we can make this type of commitment in the budget permanent and ongoing to our teachers, and that's what I intend to do.
When you talk about the economy growing and people moving here, we obviously know it is a great place to live, but that is still not technically guaranteed. I mean, critics have said that you're making rosy revenue projections. What do you say to that?
I say that Moody's has verified these revenue projections, along with the W.P. Carey School at Arizona State, the Eller School at U of A, the CBO, and the Financial Advisory Committee. Regardless, if the economy were to change, and someday it will change, the teachers' raises will be in the base budget. They will receive those raises. We've had to make difficult decisions in the past. That's what you sign up for when you run for governor. This is a situation that I want to bring a solution to, commit to the teachers on the raises, bring more dollars in support staff. But these dollars are there. They are real. I think the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan federal office, said we'll have over $1.5 billion in additional revenues in the state of Arizona over the next 5 years. So we're solving this in a very responsible way.
Does it worry you when you see scenes like this and you talk about recruiting businesses to come to Arizona, and Maricopa County, as you mentioned, is red hot right now, that at some point that will start to detract from Arizona because people say, well, wait a minute, if all of those teachers and parents are marching in protest because teachers are so poorly paid and the state of Arizona education isn't where it should be, not even in the middle of the country, but near the bottom.
Mark, that's not true. Okay, our results inside of our classrooms, the results and outcomes for our kids, a child's ability to receive an excellent education in Arizona, that exists in so many of our places. We need to do that more often. Now, our teachers do need more pay, and I want to address this, but I'm the one who sits with the CEOs and the business owners and the job creators that are considering Arizona, and they're flocking here. Okay, we've had over 200,000 people that have moved here since 2015. We've grown over 160,000 private sector jobs. It puts us in a position where we can address this teacher pay and additional dollars to our schools, which we need, and that's what we're doing.
So when you see scenes like this, you don't think that this reflects on a national basis negatively on the state?
I think if we don't solve this,
right.
I think this is a responsibility ready to bring a solution to this issue, which is a very real issue, and that's the discussion I'm having with other elected leaders. This is why you ran for office, is to solve this issue, to prevent and avoid it from happening again, and that's what I intend to do.
But what happens, bottom line, if this is not passed, the 20 by 2020?
Well, that's my commitment, is to get it passed. So I've enjoyed talking to you, but I'm going to go back to the state capitol and get to work.
Let me, before you go, and I appreciate your coming down, by the way, I didn't even mention that at the beginning. For all the parents that are home with their kids today and they had to skip work and their summer vacations may be affected if this is a long, drawn-out thing, what would you say to the parents who are watching today?
Well, first I want to say that I'm thinking about the parents in this situation. I know the pressure that this puts on a parent, especially when they're working and may have to take a child to work or find daycare for the kids to get their breakfast or lunch from these schools. So my commitment is to get this solved. And I think if we get a 20% pay raise to our teachers by 2020 and a strike continues, that just doesn't make sense to parents, it doesn't make sense to citizens. I don't think it would make sense to teachers. That's why I'm so focused on getting this done and being able to deliver, that we have gotten over the goal line on this and that we can commit to this through 2020. So I do have the parents in mind, and I want the kids back in the classroom. I want our teachers doing what they do best, which is teaching inside the classroom. And I realize graduations are coming up and summer vacations and internships, and people are going off on their missions and to the military. So I want to get this solved. I have a high sense of urgency here. It's time to take action. azleg.gov. Please tell your legislator you want to see these teachers get this pay increase.
Okay, we're going to let you get back to work. Let's pass this thing.
Governor, you had a chance to do something very special right here, right now. We wish you luck.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank Governor Doug Ducey
so much. All right, we continue our live team coverage here as we show you more of what is happening on the streets of Phoenix here, as this is a live view right here right in front of the state capitol. Our very own Joe Dana, he has been planted there from the very beginning. Joe, what can you tell us?
Hey guys, you know, a few weeks ago, Governor Doug Ducey, referring to another protest of a couple of hundred, called it political theater. He called it a circus. Well, today they are out here 20, 30, 40, 50 times fold what it was then, showing that this is a real movement. This is not just some flash in the pan whim of a few parents or a few political activists. This is something that's real, and there's a strong feeling among a lot of the parents and teachers we've been talking to today that they want long, sustainable reform. Many of them are skeptical of the governor's 20 by 2020 plan because it only addresses one of the 5 requests that have been made. And so the big question moving forward here, talking to some of the liaisons with the legislature, again, the lawmakers themselves, they're all pretty much behind closed doors, but those who are working with them, is if the governor gets the numbers he needs from both sides to stand with them tomorrow, maybe tonight, to say we're going to pass the 20 by 2020 plan, will that be enough to quell the unease and the anger and the frustration that has been boiling over now, and it is a result of 10 years of underfunding of the schools? Will it be enough? Because we're also hearing that there is another movement already underway to respond to the governor's 20 by 2020, and that would be a ballot initiative, to actually put it before the voters and say, let's address this entire issue holistically. Let's address that $1 billion shortfall. Yes, we've seen a lot of money come into the system now the last 3 years, but it's just a fraction of what the schools actually need. And so we'll likely see that as a response if the governor can get lawmakers on board with his proposal. Keep in mind, there's a Republican legislator here who has already proposed this week a 1%, I should say a 1% or 1 cent sales tax strictly for education for the next 3 years. That's a Republican. So there are many conservatives who are acknowledging that there may need to be a longer, more sustainable solution here. And of course, we've heard from some of the skeptics of the governor's plan, calling it an empty promise, or that it's going to set up the state for disappointment because you don't always know what the revenue will do over 2 or 3 years, and 80% of the governor's plan is based on projected revenue. You're making a budget based on what you believe the state will likely gain over the next couple of years, beyond what it gets right now. So there are the skeptics. There are others who say, the governor is trying to work within its means. This is a state built on a conservative value that you don't spend more than what you have. And the governor's saying we're working within that realm. We're trying to be, we don't want to add a tax to businesses. We don't want to add a tax to citizens. So we're trying to do the best we can, be the most optimistic we can with what the projected revenues are. So we're seeing a lot of the protesters now filing in. This place is filling up fast. In many ways, it's sort of a festival atmosphere as well. You've got a lot of food trucks here. You can see the stage in front of me where we're expected to see some performers. And then, of course, you have a lot of political leaders and other activists who are here. They come from all backgrounds, many political stripes. They're all here for one thing. They want something better for schools in Arizona. So that's the situation right now. We are waiting for word from the House and Senate on any kind of deal, any kind of agreement with the governor. So far, not yet. We'll keep you updated.
Joe, I was asking the governor, I don't know if you were able to hear the interview, about rumors of a 4-year plan instead of a 3-year plan. Have you heard anything about that?
We haven't heard that, but that suggests that there's still probably some friction with some of the Republican leadership and the governor, unless that proposal is coming from Democrats, but I can't imagine that would be the case. Because, again, you have a lot of the Republicans here who their instinct is to not plan to spend more than what the state has. You know, it goes against everything they believe to their core, that you stay within your means. And so they would say, hey, look, we can't do this in 3 years. You got John Kavanaugh, one of the leaders down here, a Republican from the East Valley, who says, we don't see what the governor sees. We don't see this possible in 3 years. So you may have some who are saying, look, we'll work with you on 20%, but we want to do it in 4 years.
Hey, Joe, I was wondering, obviously we know that there is no timeline or deadline as far as these walkouts. We don't know how long that they will continue. I've heard that there's possibly another rally tentatively planned for Friday, tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Capitol. Have you heard anything about this?
We heard that they're talking about having a presence here again because, look, a strike, a walkout, whatever you want to call it, it's only as effective as the message you can send with it. And if you have a bunch of teachers walking out and they're staying home day after day, then you're not making much of a political point and you're not sending a message. So it would make sense that they want to keep their presence down here and maintain it. The question is, how organized are they? Will they be able to, let's say if the governor does come up with a proposal and says we have the votes we need, will they be able to come back organized enough as a group to say we're going to remain on strike because we want more? Or will there enough people here be willing to say we're okay with that, we want to get back to our classrooms? And one of the problems, at least from their perspective, here in Arizona, you don't have an official union. It's not a union state, so we'll see how organized they are moving forward if the governor comes with his plan. But yeah, it would make sense that they want to have some kind of presence here day after day.
And of course, it's also worth noting that there's no strike fund in this, that the teachers aren't organized in a union that will pay them. And although today and tomorrow are probably paid days off because schools have scheduled to close, starting Monday, these teachers don't draw a paycheck.
This is a big sacrifice, Mark. It goes to show how deeply a lot of these teachers care about this when they're willing to risk possible ramifications. They don't have the protection of that union. We're in a right-to-work state. And then you have a lot of others, staff members, support staff, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, who will start losing their pay. They may be paid day to day. They're not even going to get paid for this. So you're right, big sacrifices being made.
Well, and not just a matter of pay. This goes beyond that. They could technically be given a letter of censure, or they may be stripped of their teacher certificate, as we heard State Superintendent Diane Douglas say, that could also be on the table as well, which again would make this problem even worse. I mean, talk about, getting kicked while you're already down. This goes well beyond just leaving the classrooms.
True, and keep in mind, Diane Douglas has another election ahead of her. She wants to likely keep some political support with Republicans. If you talk to the superintendents themselves, and I've talked to several of them over the past couple of weeks, they will tell you they would not want to see this happen. They knew it would be a huge burden on families. but almost everyone, and I sent out emails to about a dozen districts to get statements from superintendents, almost everyone said, we don't want to see this happen, but we back our teachers. We support their First Amendment rights. We want to see large, holistic changes to the education system and the way it's funded. And so I think when push comes to shove, it's tough to say a lot of superintendents would try to retaliate against teachers in any way. But I guess that also depends on how long this thing were to last.
And in many ways, Joe, and we'll let you go because we're going to move on to Charlie, this fits into the mindset of America right now, and that is when you believe something, and look at the Me Too movement.
Right.
When you believe in something, if you go out and you state that, you can definitely make change.
That's a good point. Like the Me Too movement, you know, this Red for Ed movement is sort of grassroots. It's relied on social media. It's kind of moved state to state. This is very specific when you talk about school funding, and we're seeing the change. I mean, think about it. 2 or 3 months ago, the governor insisted in interview after interview that 1% was all he could give. That's where we stood as a state, and that he was asking the state to be patient. Well, yes, revenue projections are a little brighter now, but the fact that he went from that 1% to committing to 20% over 3 years, 9 to 10% next year, that does say something about the political pressure that all of these people have put on the governor's office.
All right, Joe, stand by. We will get back to you in a few minutes, but we want to go to Charlie Edsity now as we continue our coverage. Charlie is actually out marching with the protesters, not in support of them, but in the midst of reporting on this. Charlie, what are you seeing from your vantage point?
Well, guys, we just turned westbound on Washington Avenue, just off of 3rd Avenue. We can see the Capitol down off in the distance there, so we're getting pretty close to Wesley Boland Plaza. And so, yeah, as we've been saying this entire time, hundreds, thousands of people out here on the street right now marching to have their voices heard. And I'm joined here by mom of 3, Feline. She's from the Cave Creek Unified School District. And so, Feline, how has this been impacting you as a parent? You know, what has been happening in your house?
As a parent, we just want to see our children have the education that they deserve.
Right. And so, you know, looking at the situation here, some critics of this Red for Ed movement are saying, hey, wait a second, why are the teachers not in the classroom? That's where they need to be. And so you're out here marching alongside these teachers. Why?
Because I see it firsthand every day when I go to volunteer with my kids' classrooms. The teachers ask, they don't demand, but they ask us to help fund their classrooms, the supplies.
Right. And so, you know, if this drags out longer than today, if it goes tomorrow into next week, as a parent, how is this going to impact you and, you know, your child's schooling and also your personal schedule?
You know, it's going to impact us, of course, but we're here for the teachers. We want to support them and show solidarity toward them because they are educating our future generations.
Well, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it. And over here, we've got a teacher. What's your name, ma'am?
Kelsey Wheeler with Gilbert Public Schools.
Okay, and so Kelsey, as a teacher in the middle of this movement here, we're walking towards the Capitol. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling energized. I'm a little bit nervous about the days ahead. A lot of my students have a lot resting on it. I teach a lot of seniors. So that's a big deal for us, is that graduation's just around the corner. But I know it's a worthy cause. I know my son has autism. I'm also a special ed teacher, so that's one of those things that we need our paraprofessionals. We need all that school support that we have. And we don't have the ability to pull from DDD like Newsy's original proposal was suggesting. That's something that provides therapies for my son and my students before and after school. So if we cut into that, then my students would fall behind, and so would my son. So it's a huge thing. There's a lot of stuff at stake, but I think it's a worthy cause, and that's why we're here.
How much faith do you have in our legislators and Governor Ducey to come up with a plan that can, compromise? Because that, in my opinion, is ultimately what needs to happen here. Is both sides need to sit down and talk this through, because if we don't, how are we going to move forward? So do you have faith in Governor Ducey and the lawmakers?
You know, I'm hoping that we can. Right now, my face kind of shaking a little bit, but I think that hopefully he can show who he is, and we can all follow through for our students.
So, you know, thinking about just this situation, the movement here, what if nothing happens after this march today? Are you prepared to continue to walk out of your classroom?
I am. I really hope I don't have to because of graduation and all the things that are at stake. But we're willing to do it because in the long run, it's going to affect all of our future students, not just our current. So.
Thank you for your time today. Thank you. All right, guys. So as you can see, we're on the back end of this march as it creeps closer and closer to the state capitol. You just heard there from a parent and a teacher, both expressing their support for what's happening out here, despite the walkouts, despite the school district closures. And so we're just going to have to wait and see again what our legislators and lawmakers ultimately decide to do. We just heard from Governor Ducey. They're talking about his proposed teacher pay raise plan. And, you know, talking to a lot of the teachers out here, they're not in support of it. They're extremely skeptical of where that money is going to be coming from. And so, guys, it's just going to be a big waiting game out here to see what happens.
You know, so much, Charlie. Oh, Charlie, can you hear us? Can you hear us okay? All right, well, we're going to check with Charlie in a moment, but I was going to add to that, you know, so many times we hear from the teachers, but we noticed that there is at least a dozen or so kids that have walked by. They've been part of this movement too, and I'm curious to know, you know, do they comprehend the magnitude of this movement? You know, these aren't just students, they're the teachers' daughters and sons that are affected by this.
In many ways, it is the fabric of Arizona that is out there today. How long it will last, how long they will continue to support this, who knows? But I know that a lot of parents have questions, and that's why we have the 12 News Walkout Help Hub in place. And Paul Gerke is standing by, and he's been fielding and kind of getting a pulse of how the parents that are home watching this on TV feel about it and the questions they have. Paul?
Hey there, Mark and Tram. Yeah, we've been getting a ton of questions. We brought you a whole bunch on 12 today if you're up early in the morning and watching with us. And we've got a special group of volunteers here right now. The Walkout Help Hub is open, 602-258-1212. If you have a question, call that number right now. We will answer it for you. We also have the Facebook page up right now. We've been getting a ton of questions on Facebook. For some of you that don't want to call and talk to one of our volunteers, it's an easy medium for us to field the questions you have and get you direct answers. For example, we've been receiving a lot of the same question. Kiana McDuffie and a whole bunch of other people asked just how long this strike is going to last. Unfortunately, we don't have much of a concrete answer, and it's all dependent upon what happens in each individual district. We spoke to some teachers in Cave Creek this morning that said that they were prepared to only strike for 2 days, today and tomorrow. They would reassess over the weekend and see if they can get back in the classroom on Monday. I think Governor Doug Ducey believes that if he can get his 20 by 2020 plan passed, he expects those teachers to be back in the classroom by Monday. Right after Governor Ducey wrapped up on the air with you, Mark and Tram, I got to ask a couple more questions in the lobby of our station before he headed back to the Capitol today. And I asked him point blank, if his legislation gets passed, does he expect the walkout to end? And he said if the legislation is passed, he does expect those teachers to be back in the classroom, because at that point, he says it's just downright disrespectful for them to still be walking out when he feels as if he's addressed their concerns. Now, the other question we've been getting a lot of is, will this affect the school year? Because the more days you miss, the longer this school year could extend into the summer, which is a real problem not only for your summer vacation plans, but for those kids that are about to graduate, for example. And this is a case-by-case basis too, but you have to hit a certain number of hours in the state of Arizona in order to qualify for a full school year. So if the walkout lasts only today and tomorrow, it might not present much of a problem. But if it does last a lot longer than that, those hours will have to be made up by the end of the school year. We are getting some calls into our hotline right now. The number is up on your screen, 602-258-1212. Let's talk to some of our volunteers for a second here and see if we've been getting anything. Any good questions from our viewers today?
Yes, I have a viewer on the line right now that has questions about Denise Birdwell and funds that she has and how she's going to use them with the government.
Okay, all right.
No, wait a minute. Here she says, what? Go ahead. Quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see if we can get Denise an answer.
Teachers years ago.
12 News Help Hub, this is...
Yeah, By our metrics,
where did that money go?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll try to get an answer for Denise. There is $1 billion less in the education budget right now than there was a decade ago. I think Governor Ducey's proposal is going to try to help remedy some of that, especially with the support staff money that he talked about a little earlier with you guys. I think it was $100 million set aside for support staff. So we'll continue to field your calls up here in the Help Hub, 602-258-1212. We'll try to get you the answers. You can also hop on our Facebook page. We're streaming live, and we're taking your questions up here. Mark, Tram, back to you.
All right, Paul, it's very busy up there. We appreciate your help as you man our Walkout Help Hub. Right now, joining us here is Jaime Molera. He's a former state superintendent back in 2001 to 2003. It is great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much. When you look at this video that we've been covering all morning long of this massive movement, tens of thousands of teachers, supporters, organizers, staff members, even children walking out, what goes on through your mind?
Well, first off, it's unprecedented. I've been around the Capitol for many, many years, and I've never seen something of this magnitude. And I think it just shows the frustration that's out there. And people of all sizes, all political parties, all kinds of their different affiliations are saying, you know what, bottom line is we got to fix this, and we got to do something now. The governor's put forth a proposal that hopefully they'll see the light and get it done, and this will be resolved.
You've dealt with this legislature, though, before.
Right.
You know their mindset, and we are a red state. Do you think that they will embrace and endorse what the governor is proposing?
I think so. I think these kinds of demonstrations will really, in my opinion, catapult a lot of these folks to realize if they do not do it, what's the risk of them not doing it? And I think the risk is the Republicans could see some dramatic changes come November if they don't do it.
I was going to ask you, though, but the other side of the coin is we live in a state with a lot of people on fixed income, retirees who say, you know what, I moved here from Cleveland and I paid for that tax increase for education when I raised my kids in Cleveland and Chicago and on and on. And those are the people that now live here.
Right.
So are you going to have a legislature that maybe is sensitive to those people who would vote them back in unless they approve a tax increase or some sort of a plan like this?
Well, I think a lot of the legislators that are against this, they're what's called those safe districts, right? Very hardcore safe districts that they don't feel the pressure to do this kind of an increase. And I think that's sometimes problematic because you're not getting the full flavor of what Arizona is seeing, and because there's such a little bubble, in my opinion. They can insulate themselves against, having to do these kinds of increases.
But do you think that that's part of the problem with education in our state, is that you have so many people that have moved here and retired and they just don't want any part of that?
I think that's part of it, Mark. I think one of the things that we need to remember, too, is that Arizona did fall very, very hard during the Great Recession. I mean, we were one of the worst states in the union. And to get back to that, I don't think we can do it overnight. I mean, one of the things I think the governor has talked about is trying to chip away at it, but do it in a very significant way. But it's not going to happen, I think, in 1 year. I think it'll need to happen over a number of years. I think at some point we're going to have to look at revenue increases too, as a state. But I'm hoping that we do it in a very thoughtful way.
Yeah, these are very incremental changes. Right. A certain amount, eventually getting to 2020. But I'm wondering, bottom line, sales tax increase 1%. Would you be for or against that?
I would like to see a less reliance on the sales tax. I think we need to look at all facets of the way we tax K-12 education. Property tax, for instance. I think how do we make sure that there might be a more stable revenue base? Because again, when we hit that recession, and when the sales tax dropped, we stopped building new houses, we stopped buying cars, we stopped building or getting those big ticket items. We fell really hard. And education, if they're just stuck on the sales tax as the main component, that's why it's dangerous. And I'd like to see a much broader, more level, stable revenue stream for K-12 education.
But when you talk about revenue for the state and attracting big business, isn't that part of the calling card for any state?
Absolutely. I mean, you ask Todd Sanders, the CEO, president of the Phoenix Chamber, he will tell you that one of the biggest issues that they have in recruiting firms that come into Arizona or firms that want to grow in Arizona is a quality workforce. So that has to be part of the calculation. I think legislators can't just look at this as a zero-sum game that, oh, if we spend a lot more money, then it's going to hurt us in our tax base. I think what they should look at is if we're developing a much better and higher educated workforce, we'll be that much more competitive with our neighbor states in trying to get these businesses into Arizona.
Because those people these companies have thousands of employees.
Correct.
Many of them want to send their kids to public schools, but if public education is ranked near the bottom, then what's the attraction and why would any company want to move here?
Well, and that's
you can get all the tax breaks you want, but if in the end,
absolutely,
right,
not just companies, parents, families,
and this reflects poorly on Arizona, and we understand when we say that it isn't just Arizona, but as Tram mentioned, it's Colorado,
Denver,
and Oklahoma, and West Virginia,
Kentucky.
So this is an epidemic in this country right now.
Correct. And one of the things that I think we should be proud of is that Arizona's put in place, I think, a meaningful system of education that allows for choice, that has a strong accountability component. But if you're not funding it, if you're not looking at how do you get the best and the brightest, that can be the math teachers, the science teachers, it's going to be difficult to have a system that's going to be beneficial to our public. And that's where I'm saying, that's where that balance needs to come in, of a good tax policy, but at the same time, a well-funded system where you have the best and the brightest that are teaching our kids.
Right, but that's so hard to say when, realistically, a lot of people have not wanted to come to Arizona, or they have regretted moving to Arizona because they didn't realize truly how bad this whole education issue has been financially, physically. You've got classrooms in such poor conditions. They need so many repairs. The classroom sizes are through the roof. There's not enough school supplies, not enough desks. You feel bad for the parents who, I was just talking to one of my friends who was, luckily he's in a position where he makes enough money to send his child to these camps or to these organizations where he can further his education and thrive, because honestly his kid is so smart. He gets to go to these things happening in Orlando, and I thought to myself, well, what about the parents who can't afford to send their kids for them to thrive in our system?
Well, and that's one of the other issues that we're going to need to deal with long term. You have certain areas of this state with a higher property wealth, and school districts, let's say Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, where if they want to do above and beyond what the state gives them, they can pass an override, and they can pass a bond, and they can do those things you mentioned. But there's a lot of districts in this state
that can't.
Exactly.
Even if they wanted to, right? Because it would just be way too expensive. A dime in the Madison School District can raise about $1 million, the dime of extra property tax. But to get that same amount in the Gadsden District, which is down in Yuma along the border, I mean, you're talking about $20, $30 more on the tax rate, right? You're talking thousands of dollars that people just can't afford. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to need to deal with. Not just give a good baseline funding that all kids, regardless of where they live, can thrive, but making sure that the finance system is equitable too, so that regardless of where they live, they have access to those kinds of things you're talking about.
And because of that, in the end, ultimately, no matter what happens with the legislature, could you see a scenario where there would be some sort of a ballot initiative put across to the voters in November, and then all boats rise with some sort of a tax increase?
I do. I think the first thing that has to happen is this budget needs to get passed, so that there's a very strong signal that's sent to those teachers and parents that are out there today that yes, we indeed are going to make this a priority in the Arizona budget. And to the governor's credit, I think his budget reflects that, this 20% increase. But at some point long term, I think we are going to need to look at additional revenues that covers the rest of what we need to do.
And if it's done in a ballot initiative, then those that don't want their hands dirty with a tax increase don't have it, right?
That's true.
I mean, it really is a win-win. I hate to say it because everybody uses that term, but if it's a grassroots sort of holistic, as Joe mentioned, effort to put across a ballot initiative, and our polling, and I'm sure you've seen the same polling, says most people would support it.
Well, and the business community too has been starting to be much more vocal in talking about these kinds of things. And how do we do it, not in a knee-jerk reaction, but let's look at the entire big picture. How do we get more revenue into the system? And most importantly, how do we make sure that those monies are going into those areas that have the biggest impact for our children?
You think this is a watershed moment for education in our state?
I absolutely do. I think You know, people look at this as being, well, it's too bad that this is happening. Well, sometimes we have to go through these kinds of things to get to that next level. And I'm optimistic. I think there's a good plan in place with the governor's proposing. We just need to make sure the legislature gets it done. And then we talk about the next steps that we need for Arizona's school system.
I was going to say, you know, Mark, you're lucky. Your kids, they've all graduated college. And they're out.
Yeah,
they're out of the system.
But they all went through public schools. And so I'm not just talking as someone who might have sent my kids to private school.
Right.
I know what these parents are going through, and I saw the concerns, and I saw the overcrowded classrooms, and I saw the cuts to music and art and things like that. And if I was doing it again, and I wasn't doing this for a living, I would be out there marching.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. You know, I've talked to other parents. I'm a parent myself, 4-year-old twins, and I've from colleagues to friends to preschool teachers right now for me. You know, I've talked to them, and when I see this, it is heartbreaking. It is so sad as a parent to see these teachers who don't want to walk out. They don't want to let their students
When you sign
down.
on to become a teacher, you are a special person and to a certain extent selfless because you know what you will be up against. But you should be able to make an affordable living.
Right.
You should be able to support your family.
And not have to work 2 or 3 jobs.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, I mean, when you see this, it is heartbreaking. It's very disturbing as well. And as a parent of kids currently in school, granted they're on the young side, but, you know, tell me that the future is bright for our children. Is that possible?
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. But here's where people also just can't just go out and march and say that's all I'm going to do. They need to stay engaged. They need to be involved in their kids' classrooms. They need to be going to parent-teacher nights. They need to be voting first and foremost. Because you can't just say I'm marching and that's all I'm going to do. It's all of those things in order to get our community engaged so that we do have a better education.
And sustained engagement.
Correct.
Yeah. They want a sustainable plan for education dollars. They have to sustain their engagement in the process.
Right.
It's a long effort. We're in it for the long haul, aren't we? All right, Jaime, we really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
All right now we want to check in and continue our live team coverage with Bram Resnick. Bram, tell us where you are and what you're seeing.
Well, I'm here at the Riser at this amazing rally. I've been at several rallies over the years. I've never seen anything like this. I understand there are 30 to 50,000 people here, so anybody who says Arizona doesn't care about education, just look around me. I want to give you the politics of what is going on right now. We heard Doug Ducey call on viewers, listeners, to get in touch with their legislators. Doug Ducey, the governor, has a huge political problem right now. He introduced his teacher raise plan 2 weeks ago. He still does not have the votes in that building over there. That is the House of Representatives, which Republicans control. The governor still does not have the votes in there to get his plan passed. And it's not necessarily fair to say it's legislators who oppose education. I think it's more fair to say it's legislators who are concerned about how the state is going to pay for that plan. The way the governor has presented it, funding that plan, which is based on a lot of revenue growth, our state continuing to grow, paying for that plan would basically suck money out of all kinds of other needs, which many Republican legislators say is not a good idea. So right now, there's a logjam. The governor and his staff were working over legislators last night, didn't get a deal. The House, I believe, is in session right now. I understand the House is going to come out with a statement of support for the governor's plan. Very important. That doesn't necessarily mean there are the votes to pass the governor's plan, but it at least helps show the governor from a public relations perspective that this is moving forward. We're expecting that news conference to announce that support a little later this afternoon. We'll have to see if that happens. So many things are up in the air right now. Also, one other thing we're hearing, because they have problems with how this is going to be paid for, some legislators are pushing for a 4-year plan. Right now, the governor wants to give teachers a 20% raise spread out over 3 years. Some legislators are arguing for 4 years, so the immediate hit on the budget isn't that great. And that would be 8% this year, 8% next year, 2% the year after that, and 2% in the final year. I don't think that's going to go over very well with the teachers. So where we are right now is the governor has a political problem. He's losing the political fight. He's also losing the PR fight because he does not have anything solid on the table yet he can show to parents to say, okay, look, here's this. All it is right now, frankly, is words, and that's what it has been for quite a while. On the teacher side, you have this huge rally, virtually unprecedented, probably since the immigration marches of 2006. You have this rally uniting teachers. You have the teachers who I understand there will be a ballot initiative, a push for a ballot initiative to raise taxes on high-income earners in Arizona. That would help pay for education. It would give education the dedicated funding stream that the governor's plan does not. And that's largely what the teachers union opposes, and the teachers, all the teachers opposing that plan. It's based on growth. In other words, if the state doesn't grow, there might not be a raise. And that's in a state like Arizona that goes up and down. Growth, we know, goes up and down. The money might not be there, despite the very rosy projections the governor's giving you. So, again, the teacher's perspective, they want a dedicated funding stream. It is likely they will move for that, or a group connected to them will move for that in the next day or two. You could see that on the ballot come November. So that is the political state of play, and that's what this is all about right now, how each side is going to get what they want, and at the end try to say, hey, we won, or everybody wins. I'll send it back to you.
Bram, you've covered this legislature for a long time. Do you think, even with the most contrarian of Republican legislators who have been against adding funding or adding taxes for education, that this in any way, this 30 to 50,000 people wearing red resonates with them when it comes to being reelected?
That's a really good question. It's not the 50,000 here, not necessarily just the 50,000 here, but I want to take you back a few days to Debbie Lesko's, Republican Debbie Lesko's election victory in a special election in the 8th Congressional District, one of the most Republican districts in the state. Debbie Lesko won by just 5 points in a district that has 20% more Republican voters than Democratic voters. So each one of these Republican legislators right now has to be thinking about their own district and asking themselves, could the Red for Ed movement, which did have an impact on their race, on the 8th district race, there's no doubt of that, they have to be asking themselves, will that Red for Ed movement affect me in my home district? And when you look at the places we know are education hotbeds, West Valley, East Valley, Scottsdale, you have a lot of Republican representation there. And they have to be taking a hard look at their voters, much smaller than a congressional district, and saying, could they turn on me because of all this? Could they turn on me if I don't vote the wrong way? And that's the choice the governor is asking them to, that's what the governor wants them to think about right now.
And Bram, as you know, it's been touted that our governor, Governor Ducey, is not the education governor, critics claim.
There's that, and that's a name, and maybe, until he, give him some credit for passing Prop 123 a couple of years ago. It provides $300 million a year to schools. That is a major accomplishment. Part of his problem might be people won't accept him as the education governor. That's more of a complicated thing. I will say this. There's also an issue of style here, governing style, and the way you play politics. Governor Jan Brewer got the Medicaid expansion passed at the Capitol, very controversial, over the desires of her own party. Governor Jan Brewer knew how to play politics. Governor Doug Ducey plays a very different style of politics. I have to believe if Jan Brewer were the governor, she might find a way to get this passed. Governor Doug Ducey wants to do it his way, with Republicans only, not Democrats. And frankly, that has to be one thing that's holding this back right now.
And that could hurt him, obviously.
And Bram, look, you touched on it, and I just want to follow up on this. Could this be a sign of a seismic shift in our state? In other words, the status quo, what we've seen, what we've been led to believe, the life that Arizona has lived, where the status quo and the less change, the better has been what we like and what we endorse, is shifting now. And that's why the Lesko election, the special election, was so close. And that's why we see so many people marching for Red for Ed, that we are on the brink of a seismic shift in Arizona politics in general.
I would pull back the lens and say there's a shift, a wave, blue wave, but there's a shift in the country as a whole. You know, that Lesko race is an indicator of what's going on around the country, where you have Republican voters, but more importantly, independents. They decide a lot of races. It's the independent voters who are saying, you know what, we don't like the direction you're taking us. We want to go in another direction. And if this sways anybody, the key would be the independent voters. They're the ones most likely to be swayed by this. With some Republican moderates, I can tell you, Doug Ducey, very concerned about Republican women right now. Their education is #1 for them. If he loses Republican women, that's a big problem for his re-election in November. But again, we're seeing a seismic shift here nationwide. Think about Arizona over the last month, 45 days. I've been at the Capitol for the Women's March. I think they had 20,000 people. The March for Our Lives, 15,000 people. Red for Ed rally today, 30 to 50,000. That's astonishing when you think about the image of Arizona as a state where people kind of check out. It's beautiful every day. What do we have to worry about? That's an astonishing show of hope and desire by average Arizonans. You don't see politicians out here. I haven't seen a politician yet. These are just average people. They're our neighbors. They're citizens just like you and I.
Bram, I think you're right, and I think we're watching a historic moment, perhaps, and Arizona is very much in play in that change that's sweeping across the country. And what's going to be interesting to see, and we'll be checking back with you, is if what you're hearing about this 4-year plan, the explosion that will go off in that crowd if the legislature comes out and says, we're going to propose 4 years instead of 3 on funding this increase.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. It's unclear that those details are going to come out today. What I would expect to happen is a general expression of support, but no details on the plan. These are details that, frankly, are just kind of leaking out of the discussions. We don't know where this is going to end up. Again, you have Republicans who say they want to see this funding plan in the context of the whole budget and what's not going to get paid for because the governor wants to do this.
Yeah, people want to hear and see more action than words, obviously. Yeah. Bram, thank you so much for that. Right now, we want to go straight over to Team 12's Brian West. He is in our social media area. And Brian, what are you seeing?
Well, I have to tell you, Mark and Tram, everybody is passionate about this. Everyone has an opinion. So, Mark, you had asked about an hour ago if we were seeing a lot of negative criticism. Well, on the live stream of Facebook and on Twitter, we are seeing a lot of people with opinions of how this should be handled, about seeing the crowd size, about wanting more for teachers. We have seen most of the criticism occurring there. The biggest spikes were during Governor Doug Ducey's interview here on our station and also during the superintendent, because everybody has a solution and they want to see action in some sort of way. Now, if you look at the pictures on Instagram or on Snapchat, we have a new feature of Snapchat, you will see just the stunning enormity of this entire march. So I want to show you this right here. This is one of the images that you can see of people getting off of the bus. We also have people who have flags that are down there. The light rail was completely filled with people that were for this Red for Ed movement, people lining up as early as 8 o'clock in the morning. This is right outside the Capitol lawn. You can see there are people that are sitting there. But more and more of these videos just continue to flood in. The entire downtown corridor, starting in Chase Field, people here marching all the way to the Capitol carrying signs, some carrying umbrellas because it is a very hot day, all sporting their red shirts. And also those signs that you see there, #Red for Ed. So as this movement continues through today, it is just incredible to see the size of this crowd. There are some aerial shots too that we have that are up above the thousands and thousands of marchers that have been out there from early this morning all the way until including right now. You can see there's the front of the line. People really going to Snapchat, showing exactly what's around them. You see right there somebody showing that there are just hundreds, thousands of people who are involved in this entire movement as it makes its way. There's one of the aerial shots that I'm talking about. I mean, if you're anywhere in the downtown area, for the past couple of hours, all you had to do was look out from your office window and you can see all of these people. I remember when we first got the aerial shots, Mark and Tram, you were saying, we've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, it is truly unprecedented and almost chilling that this is actually happening in our very own backyard, because we have never seen anything like this. You know, earlier you were talking about how these movements, how they have really impacted the community, lawmakers. They're forcing people to act. I mean, we're talking the Me Too movement, gun violence. People have had enough.
People believe, rightly so, and I'm happy to see it, that they can enact change. Not just change, but big change in social mores in our country, and also in tangible things like education dollars. And I think it's an important time for America. I think Bram was right. It's not just here.
Yes.
It's a seismic shift in America. Well, you just heard Brian talking about people reacting to the governor's interview. He joined us in studio just a few minutes ago, and for those of you who weren't with us, we're going to replay that interview in its entirety right now. What do you feel? What are you seeing?
Well, I am here to help the teachers. I just came from the state capitol. I'm meeting with legislators and saying it's time to pass this pay raise. We've proposed a 20% pay increase for our teachers by 2020. We also have additional money for support staff, counselors, crossing guards, other folks that are inside these schools. We've got a growing economy here in the state of Arizona. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. We have confidence that we have the dollars available. So I want to answer the question for these teachers and get these pay raises passed.
Are you confident or pessimistic that something can be done to get the kids back in school by Monday?
I'm confident that something can be done, but this is a call to leadership and it is a call to action. That's why I've been dealing directly with legislative leadership, Republicans and Democrats. I don't think this is a partisan issue, and saying let's solve this issue, let's answer this for our teachers, for the people inside our schools, and for our citizens. I'm concerned when there is a teacher strike. These kids are out of school, parents are working, they have to bring a child with them or find daycare, and many of these kids eat breakfast and lunch at school as well, so that's top of mind for me.
Yeah, and I mentioned the term collateral damage in all of this, and ultimately I think everyone's intentions are good. The teachers' intentions are good, but they deserve more pay. Your intentions are good, but you need the approval of the legislature in a sustainable manner so that the teachers can get the money that you want to get them.
Yes, absolutely. The teachers have earned this pay raise. We are getting good results inside of our schools. Our kids are leading the nation in math and reading. So I know people like to talk about funding statistics, and we do need to address those. But in terms of a child being able to have access to an excellent education in the state of Arizona, we have that available. We need to improve it. It's not perfect. We're making real progress, but the teachers have earned this pay raise. I'm calling on the legislature to work together to get this passed. I want to answer this question for the teachers as soon as possible.
Okay, what about this whole 1% sales tax increase? That we've talked about that a lot. We've heard from our viewers from 12 News. They said that they would be in support of that. A number of people would. Would you increase the sales tax by 1% to generate, basically you need $1 billion.
So when somebody's talking about a tax increase, they're talking about that they need more funds. Now, I think you saw the CBO report and the FAC report that's been validated by Moody's and the Seidman Institute at Arizona State and the Eller School of Management, that the forecast that we're putting out right now that would allow us to give teachers in Arizona a 20% pay increase by 2020, along with $100 million in additional assistance. And to simplify that, that's the support staffs, the counselors, the other people inside the school that need money as well, with flexibility for the superintendents to apply it where necessary, textbooks, school buses, those types of things. We have those dollars available. And the reason we have those dollars available, Tram, is because our economy is booming here in the state of Arizona. We're one of the fastest growing states in the nation. Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the country. Californians are coming here to live. I say often we're Chicago's favorite suburb. It's because we have a great quality of life here. It's very affordable. So I don't want to stop that, and I believe that a tax increase would send a message that Arizona isn't open for business like it has been. Now, I might be in a different spot if I were not able to apply these funds to our teachers, to the most pressing needs in our state government. But because our economy is growing, I do have those funds available. That's why I'm calling on the legislature in a very responsible and sustainable budget to put these funds forward so the teachers can count on them.
But Governor, all due respect, you, and in a certain respect, your hands are tied because you need this legislature to approve your plan. And it has been a contrarian legislature when it comes to endorsing education, $1 billion cut. Those are hard numbers.
Well, since I came into office, which is what I'll be held accountable for, we've put $1.7 billion additional dollars into K-12 education. We've increased per pupil spending 10%. We've increased the amount of dollars that are available for teacher pay and teacher raises 9%, and now I'm proposing a 20% pay increase by 2020. So I don't see my hands as tied. I'm going to persuade and influence this legislature to pass this bill. I've let them know that's the budget I intend to sign, and if citizens agree with me, they should go to azledge.gov, find out who their legislator is, and tell them to pass the governor's teacher pay proposal plan.
How confident are you in the hammer that you can hold over their head?
I am confident. We had a lot of meetings late night last night. I would have loved to come in this morning and say, we have a deal. We're getting closer. We're working through the process, but I have a sense of urgency. It is time to act. I'm ready to sign that budget right now. So I came in here because I wanted to communicate what's happening here and what's happening at the state capitol, but I'm going to head back to work, and we're going to get this done.
You know, a lot of people think that, okay, the promises, they're just words. Today, you're saying that you have been working at it, but a lot of people, including Joe Thomas, the Arizona Education Association president, he has said that every educator wishes this did not have to happen. This right here, what you are seeing, the tens of thousands right in your front yard right here, nothing has worked. He said that phone calls, emails, letters.
That's untrue. And these aren't just words. $1.7 billion is more than just words. A 10% increase in per student spending is more than just words. The 4% raise last year and a 20% increase that will be permanent, ongoing, and in the base. The teachers will have this raise, and they will be able to count on this raise once we pass this in the budget. But they are much more than just words. This is action and results for our teachers. They've earned it.
Governor, we're hearing that there may be, the legislature may push for a 4-year plan instead of a 3-year plan. Can you talk about that?
Well, I am open-minded, and I will be flexible. I've said to many legislators, the last thing I want to appear is to be imperial or inflexible here. But what I'm not going to budge on is a teacher pay increase and additional dollars for support staff. This is a real issue we need to solve. You're in elective office for a reason. It's time to move on this budget.
But that would mean that it wouldn't be 20 by 2020. It would be 20 by 21.
These are hypotheticals, and what I want to deliver on, what I've committed to, is 20% pay increase by the year 2020.
So you would not budge on that?
This is what I'm committed to.
And what about sitting down with Joe Thomas and those folks? They keep saying on our air that you won't sit down with them.
I've sat down with and listened to a lot of teachers, and a lot of teachers inside the Red for Ed movement. I've sat down with our superintendents, and I've been listening to what they're saying. Now I think it's time to sit down with people that can actually affect the outcome, to address teacher pay, to address support staff, to address per pupil spending. That's what I'm acting on, and hopefully the next time I'm here I can tell you what the result is.
But wouldn't it make sense to sit down with the Joe Thomases of the world and say, look, spell out exactly what you want, and let me take your message to the legislature. Let's try to work together, and let's get the teachers and the students back in school.
I'm here for the teachers and the kids inside the classroom. Those are the people that I've been listening to. I know how to address spending, and I know how to pass the state budget. We've done 3. They've been fiscally responsible, and our economy has been growing, and it's put us in a position where we can make this type of commitment in the budget permanent and ongoing to our teachers, and that's what I intend to do.
When you talk about the economy growing and people moving here, we obviously know it is a great place to live, but that is still not technically guaranteed. I mean, critics have said that you're making rosy revenue projections. What do you say to that?
I say that Moody's has verified these revenue projections, along with the W.P. Carey School at Arizona State, the Eller School at U of A, the CBO, and the Financial Advisory Committee. Regardless, if the economy were to change, and someday it will change, the teachers' raises will be in the base budget. They will receive those raises. We've had to make difficult decisions in the past. That's what you sign up for when you run for governor. This is a situation that I want to bring a solution to, commit to the teachers on the raises, bring more dollars in support staff. But these dollars are there. They are real. I think the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan federal office, said we'll have over $1.5 billion in additional revenues in the state of Arizona over the next 5 years. So we're solving this in a very responsible way.
Does it worry you when you see scenes like this and you talk about recruiting businesses to come to Arizona, and Maricopa County, as you mentioned, is red hot right now, that at some point that will start to detract from Arizona because people say, well, wait a minute, if all of those teachers and parents are marching in protest because teachers are so poorly paid and the state of Arizona education isn't where it should be, not even in the middle of the country, but near the bottom.
Mark, that's not true. Okay, our results inside of our classrooms, the results and outcomes for our kids, a child's ability to receive an excellent education in Arizona, that exists in so many of our places. We need to do that more often. Now, our teachers do need more pay, and I want to address this, but I'm the one who sits with the CEOs and the business owners and the job creators that are considering Arizona, and they're flocking here. Okay, we've had over 200,000 people that have moved here since 2015. We've grown over 160,000 private sector jobs. It puts us in a position where we can address this teacher pay and additional dollars to our schools, which we need, and that's what we're doing.
So when you see scenes like this, you don't think that this reflects on a national basis negatively on the state?
I think if we don't solve this, I think this is a responsibility to bring a solution to this issue, which is a very real issue, and that's the discussion I'm having with other elected leaders. This is why you ran for office, is to solve this issue, to prevent and avoid it from happening again, and that's what I intend to do.
But what happens, bottom line, if this is not passed, the 20 by 2020?
Well, that's my commitment, is to get it passed. So I've enjoyed talking to you, but I'm going to go back to the state capitol and get to work.
Let me, before you go, and I appreciate your coming down, by the way, I didn't even mention that at the beginning. For all the parents that are home with their kids today and they had to skip work and their summer vacations may be affected if this is a long, drawn-out thing, what would you say to the parents who are watching today?
Well, first I want to say that I'm thinking about the parents in this situation. I know the pressure that this puts on a parent, especially when they're working and may have to take a child to work or find daycare for the kids to get their breakfast or lunch from these schools. So my commitment is to get this solved. And I think if we get a 20% pay raise to our teachers by 2020 and a strike continues, that just doesn't make sense to parents, it doesn't make sense to citizens. I don't think it would make sense to teachers. That's why I'm so focused on getting this done and being able to deliver, that we have gotten over the goal line on this and that we can commit to this through 2020. So I do have the parents in mind, and I want the kids back in the classroom. I want our teachers doing what they do best, which is teaching inside the classroom. And I realize graduations are coming up, and summer vacations and internships, and people are going off on their missions and to the military. So I want to get this solved. I have a high sense of urgency here. It's time to take action. azleg.gov. Please tell your legislator you want to see these teachers get this pay increase.
Okay, we're going to let you get back to work. Let's pass this thing.
Governor, you had a chance to do something very special right here, right now. We wish you luck.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Governor Doug Ducey
so much. As you just saw our interview with Governor Ducey earlier this afternoon, he is very confident that he can get this 20% passed by 2020. We're also showing you a tweet that former Governor Jan Brewer just tweeted. She says, "Sleeping giant is awake at the Capitol today," as she snaps a picture right there of this sea of red movement that is happening, this very historic movement happening before our very eyes. #RedForEd.
Well, as you know, we've been listening to a lot of teachers, a lot of parents, a lot of educators, a lot of legislators on both sides of this issue for the past few days. And one of the things that we thought we would do today for this historic march is have some teachers embedded in the march to get their views on this historic moment. Let's go to what some of them are saying right now.
Pinnacle High School checking in, and we are Red for Ed for our students. Red for Ed! We're so excited getting ready for the Capitol today. We've got all of our water bottles. It's going to be a hot one out there. It's supposed to be 98 degrees, but that's not going to stop us. I know I'm going to get a lot of questions today, as in why I'm walking out. And I'm not walking out on my students. I'm walking out for my students. And more importantly, I'm walking out for my 3 kids. I have 3 kids who attend public school here, and they deserve it. It's about reinstating levels of funding back to 2008 levels. I mean, 2008. Our kids deserve that. And if you're a parent, I don't see how you could be against that. My friend Amanda Martini, we teach together at Pinnacle High School. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling a little nervous because I'd rather be teaching my students in class right now, but I know that I need to do this for them in order for them to get the education that they deserve.
What are we hoping to get out of today?
Today we're hoping to bring awareness to the fact that public education in the state of Arizona is underfunded and devalued.
What message are we trying to send our students today?
We want our students to know that we want the absolute best for them, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get that for them.
You can hear the honking in the background. A lot of support out there for teachers today. About to head in after my meeting with Anthony Kern to go see Governor Ducey. Very gracious that he's willing to sit down with some of us today.
And you have just watched a number of teachers in our community really capturing the pulse of what is happening on this very historic day. Right now, we want to go upstairs to Team 12's Paul Gerke. He has been manning our phone lines with our Teacher Walkout Help Hub. And Paul, what kind of questions are people asking?
A lot of intelligent questions. The people out there just trying to find an avenue, I think, to voice some of the concerns they have about the walkout they're seeing on their television right now. Some of the questions we're having trouble finding answers for. I'll give you one of those in just a minute. But first, I want to reference a call we got just a moment ago from a retired teacher that thinks the message of Red for Ed is being changed as we go along, that the AEA, the Arizona Education Association, and the AEU, the Arizona Educators United Group, believe that they're changing the message of this movement as it goes along, and that this caller in particular was concerned that some of the teachers' opinions were not being heard and their views not being reflected in the walkout of tens of thousands that you're seeing today. The best answer that we could give her were that, yes, almost a quarter of the teachers that voted on whether or not to walk out today were not in favor of walking out in the first place. So, again, not all viewpoints are being represented by Red for Ed, but I think the general consensus of the movement is that this is maybe what's best for teachers going forward. One of the questions we were able to answer just a moment ago was about support staff money. This has been a big sticking point in Governor Ducey's 20 by 2020 proposal. Where is the money for the support staff? We're talking about the counselors. We're talking about the people that help the schools run on a daily basis that aren't necessarily considered teachers. Under Ducey's 20 by 2020 plan, there is $100 million earmarked for additional assistance. That is not specifically for support staff, but that money can be used. In fact, Governor Ducey tweeted out relatively recently, using Chandler Unified School District as an example, that Chandler itself, under this plan, would be earmarked for about $5 million of that additional assistance money that they could be using toward their support staff. So the long and short of it is that, yes, there is money that can be used toward that support staff, but Governor Ducey's 20 by 2020 plan does not necessarily set money specifically aside for that support staff. We know that's a big concern for our teachers going forward. And one of the questions I wanted to pose to Mark and Tram that we we weren't able to find an answer for came from a 70-year-old retired teacher. She stepped away from the business, but due to extenuating circumstances, had to get back into the classroom on a full-time basis. She's curious now, she just started back up this year, if she would be eligible for Governor Ducey's 20 by 2020 pay raise if she kept her current position. Mark and Tram, it's my understanding that if she is a full-time teacher, she would be able to be eligible for that raise. Wouldn't you think so?
I would think.
I would think so,
Yeah,
but since you're retired, you're no longer in the system.
Yeah, but she is a full-time teacher again now, so
You're
she
a
was in the
full-time
system
teacher.
and then out of the system and now back in the system. We'll try to track down an answer for her, and we'll try to track down an answer to any of the questions you might have. You can still call our help hub right now. Operators are standing by. Our volunteers ready to take your call and try to find the answers to your burning questions. 602-258-1212. You can also hop on the 12 News Facebook page. We're streaming this broadcast live, and there's a comment section where you can post any of your concerns or questions, and we'll try to get you the best answer possible right here on 12 News. Back down to the studio.
All right, Paul, thanks. Appreciate you taking the pulse of the people, because there are so many people watching this that aren't down marching, and they have a voice that should be heard as well.
And we should also mention, too, I mean, you see that whole wave of people marching downtown. It's also happening for those who are not able to go downtown. It's happening all throughout the valley. Again, this morning I was just passing through Cactus and Tatum, also Tatum and Deer Valley Road. A number of people wearing their Red for Ed shirts on the corner, encouraging people to honk their horns to raise awareness about this very pressing and important issue. Right now, to the right of your screen to us, we are showing you live pictures right now from the state capitol where they are holding a rally. They had been lining up as early as 8 o'clock this morning at Chase Field, making their way down about 2 miles. Just imagine what that looked like. 2 miles of red just coming down to the state capitol. Let's listen in to what they're saying right now.
Together, we will give educators a raise, and together, we will provide students with the education they deserve. And we will win. We will win. And I will leave you with one last thing. It's a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. One of the greatest liabilities of history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through the great periods of social change. Every society has its protectors of the status quo and its fraternities of the indifferent who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. Today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. After West Virginia, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and now Arizona, we are in the midst of an education revolution. So do not forget this day, and do not forget this moment, because this is our moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dylan Wagella. Quick announcement, real quick. Shuttles back to Chase Field are being held at Madison and 17th. Madison and 17th. So if you're one that needs to catch those shuttles, please do. I'm going to introduce the next person to the stage. You've seen him a lot on TV. You've seen him a lot, well, you haven't seen him, but he's been on the radio. And you've read his words, and you've seen...
Okay, we're listening into this rally, this Red for Ed rally that's going on down at the state capitol. It is coming up on the top of the hour at 1 o'clock. This has been going on since early this morning, and I'll remind everyone, and if you haven't been outside, you probably know this. Not a great headline, but it's hot out there. So all of these folks have been out in the heat, which has slowly climbed. We're now in the 90s. I think it's supposed to top out at about 98 or 99 today. Let's listen back in.
How do we feel right now? I feel about the same way. This is incredible. So my name's Noah Carvelis. I'm a music teacher. I'm also one of the organizers with Arizona Educators United. And thank you for being here today for this historic event. Can you even believe this is happening right now in Arizona? Can you honestly even believe that this is taking place? Everyone said this could never happen in Arizona. They said it could happen in West Virginia. They said you might see it in Oklahoma, you might see it in Kentucky, not in Arizona. Well, here we are. So where are the skeptics now? Because we're here and we are bringing a change. Now, one thing I want to clear up. A lot of people think that this movement was born out of one tweet and a Facebook event. That's not true. This movement was born out of decades of neglect. This movement was born out of years of living paycheck to paycheck. This movement was born out of the experience of looking into our students' eyes and knowing that our state, the people who sit in this building, do not fund their success. That's what started this movement. That's why we're here. And now each and every one of you have stood up and you said, I can't just sit here and watch this any longer. We need to do better. And that's what we're all here today to say. We need to do better. We need to do better right now. And that is powerful. And that's what a democracy looks like. And that's why we're in this position right now, which is a position of power and a position to bring change to this state. Standing together here today, you are bringing change. And we together are going to bring a change that is felt in every single corner of this state and affects every single child growing up in Arizona. And you need to be proud of that, because if you didn't do it, no one else would. The people in this building would not do it. You did that. And now here we are, because our voices have still gone unheard. Over the last few weeks, we've continued to organize, but our legislators, they ignore us because they seem set on just continuing business as usual. Well, let me tell you something right now. I'm a little tired of business as usual. I'm a little tired of our students.
Okay, you've been listening to Noah Karvelas from Arizona Educators United, very passionate, speaking to all of the Red for Ed marchers that have now started to assemble down at the state capitol. Someone who knows that area very well, former Governor Jan Brewer, now on the phone with us. And Governor, thank you so much for joining us. And we just showed your tweet a little while ago, Sleeping Giant Awakened.
Boy, is it. Is it. Huge. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable what's going on down there. This is truly going to be a historic day in the state of Arizona. Unbelievable.
Governor, do you think this is a watershed moment for education in our state?
I do. I absolutely do. I think that they are alive and they're educated and they understand the process and they know that they haven't been listened to and they've been ignored over the years and they're not going to put up with it anymore. Is my take on all of it. You know, I've served in the legislature, I've served on the county level, I was Secretary of State, and then I was governor. So I know a lot about constituencies and how they affect things. And I tell you, this situation has been totally let out of control. It needs to be addressed, and it needs to be done fast.
So, Governor, since you've obviously been there, done that, you know what it's like dealing with the lawmakers, trying to persuade them to pass these proposals. How confident are you that the 20% by 2020 will get passed?
Well, I'm not confident at all, because I think that everybody understands what has been relayed to me is that the 2020 plan, you know, it sounds good and sound like, you know, show me the bill. Show me the details, you know. We don't have any of that. And all these promises that something's going to happen. I just heard recently, just about 5 minutes ago, that the Senate had adjourned and they're not coming back till Monday. I mean, are we going to let this thing fester and just get bigger and get worse? We need a solution. And working with the legislature, I mean, that's your job. I mean, you know that one person can't do anything. That is your responsibility it's not like if I've been in business, you get to make the decisions. You get to decide when you're going to do something, and then you face the problem. In government, you have to work with both the House and the Senate and the governor. You have to come together.
You know, I have to say what was interesting, our political reporter, Bram Resnick, obviously you are very familiar with Bram. He talked about governing styles, and he talked about one of the legacies that you leave behind, the fact that you were able to win the Medicaid expansion. That was a huge, huge win, a huge overhaul, and you were able to get both sides to come together on this issue. The thing with Governor Ducey, however, according to Bram, his style is more garnering support within Republicans. How difficult is that? Because again, you have done this before. You know what it takes to get everyone to agree on this, or at least try to agree.
Well, you got to know the flavor of the politics that's going on, and then you need to know and understand certainly the politics of the whole situation. When I moved forward, I assimilated a plan. I talked to the legislators. I talked to the people that were dealing with that issue, and I sat at the ninth floor and decided what I was going to do, and I did what some people will call throw down and moved it through, counted my votes, and got it done, and on both sides, got it done with both sides. And I was proud of that moment, and I don't regret one thing that I did in regards to that. And I think the people of Arizona appreciated it. We saved our rural hospitals. It's a big deal. It was a big deal.
Governor, you are a dyed-in-the-wool Arizona politician. You've been at it at all levels, including the highest level, sitting in the governor's seat. Do you think that ultimately we're going to wind up with some sort of a special ballot initiative in November, that these legislators are going to wash their hands of having any sort of a tax increase on their resume and instead just allow this to go to the voters?
I think that's always hard to call. Unfortunately, if it goes to the ballot, it's going to take a while to get it into their paychecks, into their wallet. But I think that maybe we'll get resolution at the legislature. I mean, it is, after all, an election year, and as politicians, we are concerned about our election because we do this because we want to be in those positions. So, but I would assume that if they don't get it done, that it will be on the ballot, and that could be very interesting to see what kind of results would come from that. It would hurt the politicians. It would. Mark, you've been around a long time, and I mean that generously, that you've got to listen to the people you represent. And, I mean, there is no doubt out there that it's not only the teachers, but it's the parents, it's the people you go to church with. It's the people today that are taking care of all these kids that don't have a place to go in the churches and the YMCA, the YWCA and the YMCA and all these organizations. Everybody understands that our schools aren't funded. I mean, do something. And you have to have a plan, and you got to move forward. And you need a total revenue source. I mean, it has to be ingrained in there. I don't know where they're going to come up with that.
But there's this, Governor, there's this culture in the legislature which seems to feel that we can't attract big business to Arizona and say we're, quote, open for business if we don't provide these tax cuts, and therefore we're not funding the schools. Do you know what I'm saying? And at some point, you have this convergence of the need for Arizona to be able to proudly say, we support our teachers, we support education in our state, we're going to fund it even if it means a tax increase, but still be able to attract the big business.
Absolutely. And if my memory serves me correctly, there was a group of very successful business leaders in Arizona. That's exactly what they suggested. And it got, pushed away because of people making promises that, would look badly if they went back on their word.
So I'm wondering, as you look at this, obviously you've tweeted about it, you know, it's so disheartening to see. What would you say to our current Governor Ducey right now?
Well, I don't know what I would say to him because I don't know exactly what direction he really wants to go. So, you know, you're not going to solve problems unless you know why this is taking place from their side of it. But obviously, he knows that he's got a tiger by the tail, and an angry one at that. And to be able to move forward overnight from 1% to 20%, he knows he's got a huge issue on his hands. He has not reached out to me. I haven't spoken to him or his staff. I have spoken with a few people that are involved in the legislature. But I try to be a good former governor and keep my mouth shut. But I got involved in education because of education. I got involved in politics because of my kids' education, and so it's been a long, lingering issue. That I believe that education is very, very important, and you've got to fund it. And it breaks your heart when you see that our schools are in terrible condition. They're using old textbooks. Our teachers aren't getting paid, and we're 48th in the country. It breaks your heart. To me, I think education is to be our number one issue.
Jan, do you think it's a slap in the governor's face that the Senate is adjourned and won't be back until Monday? Every member of that legislature sees what's going on today. They know what's going on, and yet they've decided to adjourn until Monday. Isn't that right? A slap in the governor's face?
Oh, if I was governor, I would be very upset and disappointed and thinking, am I in this boat alone? Or what? No, it was, you would take it as a slap in the face, of course. Of course. They're showing their strength. And evidently, they're not dealing in good faith with, the ninth floor and the legislature, or they wouldn't have gone home. We hear, that Governor Ducey said, I believe, on some program today, that he was going to have this resolved by the end of the week. Well, they're not coming back till Monday. You know what I did? They walked out on me, too, or they went home, they signed and left, and I heard about it, and 5 minutes later, I called a special session. I said, we're moving. And I got everybody checked, but we did the right thing. That's what I had to do. You want to go home? I'm calling you back. We're not leaving until we get this solved.
Maybe that's what our governor should do, our current governor. Maybe he should call a special session and say, ladies and gentlemen, you're not leaving until we get this done.
Well, they need a bill so people know what it is. I had my bill ready to go. Mine was very simple, I talked and talked and talked. There's no bill. There's no bill. There's nothing on paper that I've seen or people that I've spoken to that have seen. It's just, for lack of better words, promises and sound bites.
Yeah, it's just been a proposal so far.
Yeah. Jan, I'll tell you who I feel sorry for. The collateral damage in this. All of the kids, and you talked about it. The kids who were going, in many cases, without breakfast and lunch. The teachers who, after Friday, will not be paid. Who sometimes, even if something is passed or they get back to work, will have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to support their families. Bram Resnick earlier talked about this seismic shift not only in Arizona but in America. So I want to ask you, I know you supported Debbie Lesko, but she only won by 5 points. Do you sense that the core of Arizona politics is shifting, and these contrarian legislators, the senators who walked out on the governor today in the face of this Red for Ed movement, they better watch their tails because the people are mad and they may not vote for them again, even if it means a tax increase?
I think that we as Republicans are going to have to really listen to our constituency. We're going to have to work harder. And yes, everybody ought to be very concerned about their elections. A win is a win, but it shows you the flavor of where we're headed. And you just can't be no all the time. You can't be no all the time. We have a government for a reason, and that is to provide services that we pay our taxes for. And that's what they want. That's what they expect, and that's what they should get. And no one's listening to them.
Well, Governor, I appreciate your time. I know you care deeply about education during your time in office. And look, we're at an interesting time here for education, for educators, for parents, for students, and hopefully somehow something will get done. But it's very disheartening to hear that the Senate has adjourned until Monday, despite what they know that is happening right outside of their windows.
Oh, absolutely. But you know, what are they going to do if they don't have a plan? I mean, someone. Anyway, yeah, they need a bill. They need a bill.
All right.
And obviously, they don't like the proposal from the governor.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Former Arizona Governor Jan Brewer on the phone with us. Jan, thanks for taking a couple of minutes.
Thank you so much.
We should also mention, too, earlier political reporter Bram Resnick, he had mentioned that the House may be coming out with support for the governor's plan. However, technically not the vote. So we will have to wait and see. We're giving you a live look right here from this rally that's happening at the state capitol in this whole Red for Ed movement that started as early as 8 o'clock this morning as a number of students, even the teachers, the staff, the community members, everyone in support of this very historic movement all gathered at Chase Field and made that 2-mile walk. We're talking numbers upwards up to 50,000 people as we are showing you Sky 12 views of just this sea of red making their way down to the state capitol right here. We've heard from a music teacher from the Arizona Education United. We've heard from Joe Thomas with the Arizona Education Association president, a number of teachers going up there on stage, making their voices heard, that this goes well beyond the 20% by 2020. They're demanding things like competitive pay for support staff, restore state education funding to 2008 levels. We're talking $1 billion alone. A decade ago. That is a lot of money, and at issue really is, where is this money going to come from?
And is it sustainable?
Exactly, and that is where Governor Ducey is hitting a roadblock with a lot of these Republican lawmakers, is that they aren't willing to budge as far as where this money is going to come from.
Yeah, look, we have said it before, and for those of you just tuning in, this is an historical day in Arizona. To see between 30 and 50,000 people that are concerned about the poor state of education in our state. And we just had former Governor Jan Brewer on talking about it. When you look at the stats, we're at or near the bottom in almost every category. Teacher pay, per pupil spending, in a lot of ways, the test scores that are Arizona. And look, to a certain extent, this is Arizona's calling card, the quality of education.
Emergency services to the stage now.
Let's listen back in.
Emergency services to the stage. We have 2.
The young gentleman right there in the striped shirt, we understand that this is a March for Your Lives organizer right there, but we do know that it is very hot outside. We're talking temperatures in the 90s. So there is also a lot of support staff in terms of the fire department as well, just being on hand in case anybody passes out. But let's listen in to this organizer.
I want to just tell everyone here to stay strong, because I locked myself in the governor's office for 6 hours on Friday. Instead of a meeting, he turned the temperature down to 60 degrees, forcing me to leave because it was too cold. You teachers need to teach him a civics lessons, because I'm pretty sure elected officials need to meet with their constituents. In middle school, I was headed down a dark path. I suffered from depression and anxiety because I never quite fit into the school I transferred to. But every day, I looked forward to my computer tech class because the wonderful woman who taught it knew me by name. She pushed me to be the man that I am today. She was my guidance counselor, my instructor, my mentor, but most importantly, she was my friend. What happens inside the gates of our schools impacts our lives for decades. Our teachers create the next generation. So tell me why my middle school teacher had 3 jobs. Tell me why she and so many others struggle to just get by. Tell me why, after taking the role of not just a teacher, but a parent, a nurse, a counselor, a superhero, so many others can't even survive. It's not right logistically nor morally. For the past few months, I have been humbled to be a part of a youth-led movement for safer schools. What we students have come to understand is that funded schools are safer schools. And unfortunately, the same support that changed my life forever is fading away quickly. So I must make it clear, Governor Ducey, teachers just don't teach. They make our children who they grow up to become. They have made me into the man that I am today and the confident person who stands before you, because I can tell you that not too long ago, I was far from it. Governor Ducey, my life was saved because my teacher took the role of a school counselor, because we have a 900 to 1 student ratio. And that's just not sustainable. Governor Ducey, the children who you have ignored through marches, meetings, and 8-hour sit-ins stand with teachers because funded schools are safer schools. This is so much more than teacher pay raises, because support staff like counselors, social workers, janitors, bus drivers, all work to shape your children so far into the future. I stand with teachers because for so long they have stood with me. I'm really humbled to be here, and I can't emphasize how much my life has been changed because of the kindness and the mentorship and the support my teachers have gotten when I had not a single friend. Thank you.
"17-year-old Jordan Harb from the Arizona March for Our Lives, with some very, very passionate and powerful words that teachers don't just teach, they change lives, the lives of our children. And in the end, that's what this is all about.
Absolutely. It's about the children. It's about the students. It's about, no matter which way you see this, the one thing that the governor, that the state superintendent, that the teachers, that anybody can agree on, it's the children. It's these students. They are the ones who are left helpless in a way. They are the ones who are getting the brunt of this lack of education funding, not having the proper supplies, not having the necessities, the current textbooks that they need, the classroom sizes, being lost in that, being ranked near the bottom of the country when it comes to education. They're the ones, sadly, who are paying the price for this. And in some way, shape, or form, there has to be, you hope and pray, a resolution that comes soon, that people can agree on this and come together and for the benefit of these kids. We had just gotten a report from the Phoenix Police Department that there are more than 50,000 people in this event. More than 50,000. Today, Thursday, April 26th, 2018, this is going to go down in history as the biggest education movement Arizona has ever witnessed.
And I wonder, as you say that and you put out those numbers, that's in the face of the Arizona Senate adjourning until Monday. Until Monday. What a slap in the face to Governor Ducey and his plan.
And to the kids.
And to the kids. And to the people who vote for them.
Right.
So now, in all fairness, there is another component to this, and those are the folks who are on fixed incomes, who supported their kids in other places and moved to Arizona to retire. They say, and I understand it, I supported all of those things when I was raising kids. I moved here so I didn't have to support those things. But sometimes you have to step up for the greater good.
Right, for the community.
For the community and the state that you live in. And this may be one of those cases.
Folks who are educated enough to make our communities grow.
Again, we are listening in on a number of speakers, from students to teachers, from organizers. They are all rallying, more than 50,000 people rallying downtown at the state capitol, wanting their voices heard, raising an awareness that it's not just about teacher salaries. It's about the children, it's about education, and they need help. They need more than $1 billion of help.
And at some point, it's worth pointing out that this spirited march will turn into anger, either against the legislature and against the state senate, or against the teachers, because you have summer vacations at stake. People have paid for trips to go somewhere. They have non-refundable plane tickets and hotels and things like that. And at some point, this starts bleeding into days that will have to be made up. That's not negotiable. You have school days that if schools can't reopen on Monday or Tuesday or whatever the day is, you're going to have to make up those days. And so that starts impacting people. And you also have the parents who don't have or can't afford child care that are staying home today.
Right. Or leaving their kids at home alone.
And so what's interesting to think about is, how will the feelings of empowerment today morph into something else the longer this goes on?
Absolutely. And there is no word on how exactly long this walkout will last. That's the scary thing in all of this. You know, you look at the passion, you look at the outrage from so many of these teachers, and they're in it. I mean, who knows how long this will last, possibly through Friday. There's obviously been talk of another rally planned from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the state capitol as well. And whether or not this will bleed through the weekend into next week, you know, there's no way to tell, but the ramifications could be crippling. And it affects so many people. If you think that you don't have kids and you are not affected by this, you're wrong. There are so many things that can happen between now and who knows how long, that we all have a part in this. We are all affected by this movement in some way, shape, or form, and we've been seeing it not just here in Arizona, but all throughout the nation. When this whole movement, Red for Ed, started back at the end of February in West Virginia. This was a grassroots movement, and who would have thought that it would have bled here to Arizona? Well, right now we want to check in with Team 12's Antonia Mejia. Antonia, where exactly are you right now?
Hi, Tram. So we are right behind the Capitol, on the other side of where all of the action is happening. It's actually 19th Ave in Jefferson, and what we actually did is gathered a small group of Red for Ed supporters, all of these folks out here. They marched along earlier this morning when all of the action was taking place, and really what a lot of people are just doing now is starting to disperse. But there's a few folks actually. Lady over here, teacher, I know that you ladies came all the way from Rio Rico, Arizona. And I know that, you know, obviously everyone here is to really just state their cause, make their voices heard. I'd love to get just your input about all of this.
Well, the bottom line is funding for education. So a lot of people think it's just for teachers' salaries, and it's not. It's funding for the schools, for our kids. We haven't had the funding stopped in 2008 and has not increased. It's for our support staff as well. So it's for everybody. It's not what some people think just for teachers.
And you know, I should have gotten your name first.
Mary Kottner, and I'm a health teacher at a middle school at Cuadamunde Middle School in Rio Rico, Arizona.
All right, and how do you ladies just really see this whole march taking place and just the impact that it's really just created?
Well, we're hoping that it does have an impact and does make a difference because we're passionate about it.
No, and we can definitely sense that. I know that we've been marching along with everybody that's out here, and I'd love to get your name as well.
Michelle Mayo.
Michelle, where are you from?
Rio Rico.
Rio Rico as well. And are you a teacher, educator?
A paraprofessional.
Paraprofessional. So you're out here.
Special ed.
So just really give me your input on coming out here and being part of this massive march.
I don't know what to say. It's amazing to actually be a part of it and support all the teachers that I work with in our schools. We do need the funding.
Yeah, and it's something that we have definitely heard all along and really just throughout this morning. Thank you so much, guys. I know that a lot of you guys have just joined this group that we gathered out here. And Tram, something that you guys had mentioned a little while ago is the amount of people that Phoenix Police is reporting out here. We've heard that there's as many as 75,000 Red for Ed ralliers, all of them really with just their signs, "I am the future of Arizona. Do you see me?" A lot of these people, children, families, parents, just a lot of emotions, a lot of just people just stating their cause, as we have really just been seeing all along throughout this morning.
All right, Antonia Mejia in the midst of that.
And now they're quiet.
Antonia, have you seen anybody that's been bothered or overcome by the heat? Because we know we're approaching the mid-90s now.
Oh my gosh. So I can tell you guys this much. Security is doing a really good job of just like making sure everything runs smoothly. We've seen firefighters on scene, a lot of people helping people, massive amounts of individuals also just like asking, do you need water? Do you guys have water? And so a lot of people just really looking out for each other. And I know that the media as well, there was some folks in our 12 News team, you know, they were also feeling a little bit on the dehydration side. A lot of people that have felt that way have really just like taken a step, you know, taken that time to breathe. And as far as what our photographer Carlos and I have seen, not a lot of severe situations. People really just being cautious with the heat, and again, firefighters, the fire department is out here. They're really just doing a good job of making sure that everybody out here is safe, and then the supporters also providing water stations anywhere and everywhere, really.
Antonia, that goes for you too. Please stay hydrated out there. It's going to be a long day.
Again, we talked about the numbers, at least 50,000 people out there today on this very hot day where it is in the 90s. You also, from her live shot right there, from her vantage point, you saw a number of kids too. We can't forget about the kids that are gathering out there, because there's at least 840,000 children who are not at school today because of this huge walkout. So again, whether they are at home, whether they are, you know, at a number of these organizations that have been set up to help these kids, camps, Boys and Girls Club, what have you, Arizona Science Center. There's so many people in the community and organizations who are gathering support to keep these kids busy on their day off. But some of them marching with their parents who are teachers.
And you talk about the ripple effect of this. It's not at the core, of course, it's pay for teachers and support staff, guidance counselors, all of the other people that you mentioned. But then it spreads out. It spreads out to the parents that have to miss work or have to pay for childcare. It spreads out to children who will go without breakfast and or lunch for the foreseeable future. It spreads out to families that may have to reschedule vacation time. So, and ultimately, it reflects on the state of Arizona. This is a national story tonight. This will be on every network newscast. And if you're thinking about relocating to Arizona from another state, whether you own a business or not, you'll say, Arizona must have some big problems with their education system.
Exactly.
And is that going to make you pause to rethink your decision to move here?
And I think that's where we talked about how it affects everybody. You don't have to have a child in school right now for that to affect you firsthand. That is the blunt of it right there. But when you talk about as a person in this society, in this community, in Arizona, the overlying image, you know, you take this step back and you look at what is going on in Arizona. And, you know, when you hear the governor talk about, well, this study says that our economy will be booming. This study says that, you know, things will be flourishing. This is where we're going to get the money. We're going to be depending on the economy for these extra funds. technically they can project, they can make their projections, but it's not a guarantee.
No.
And so when people see this, why would they want to come here when it looks like this? I mean, our education system is in shambles. Hence the more than 50,000 people making this 2-mile walk in the heat to prove their point.
And I, believe me, understand what the governor was saying. You know, he wants to hang out that sign, and it's been one of the benchmarks of his tenure as governor. Arizona is open for business, and he has attracted a lot of business to Arizona. And Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the country, which benefits everyone. But ultimately, at some point, a negative like a teacher march, where it is a symptom of the poor state of education in this state, will start to reflect negatively on the state and may cause some of those businesses to back off. So it's a real tightrope for the governor. It really is. And then you have a legislature which effectively has turned its back on him.
Doesn't want to
and
budge.
his plan. They need to be in there in the State House and the Senate and work this out for the good of the kids, for the good of the teachers, and most importantly, for the good of their political careers.
Yeah.
Because the people, when we saw it with Debbie Lesko, a five-point victory in a red state like Arizona is not what you would have seen 10 years ago.
Yeah, and those shades of red are waning because as we know, the number of independents, that number has been steadily rising over the years.
Right.
So, you know, you talk about whether it's Republican versus Democrat, red versus blue. I mean, that in the middle, right there, independents, that is a growing population, and you saw it make a margin of a difference right there. That was a very, very close race.
And look, no one wants to pay higher taxes. I don't. I don't think you do. But sometimes you have to.
Because it's for the good of the society.
It's the greater good.
Yeah.
Let's check in with Brian West, who has the latest coming in on social media.
And Mark and Tram, what I have to tell you is people are still vehemently talking about this. If you look on our Facebook feed and also on Twitter, I saw Facebook, we still had about 700 and 800 people talking about this trending topic, not just here in our state, but also nationally, internationally. You were saying tonight that the major cable networks and also national news are going to be covering this. Well, this lives on through social media, and that's what we are seeing right now. I want to show you some of the comments that we got. Mark, you said, is it all good? No, we show you right there that Matt says, you know, red for ed will backfire so bad. We also have another negative comment that says, dear teachers, if you really want to make a difference, quit your jobs. All of you at once, that will prompt instant movement towards a solution. But I have to say, out of those few comments, I have actually seen much more pictures like this one that support this cause. This is in front of the Capitol. You have to imagine 50 to 75,000 people are out there. They all have their cell phones. This says, I march for my 136 math students, 14 baseball players, 10 Christian club members, 200 no student eats alone participants. They deserve better. All these pictures flooding in. This one from Mrs. Magnuson says, march to the Capitol, hashtag red for ed. You see a lot of the signs that are out there, kids that are out there, teachers, parents. Rob says, of course, Arizona teachers march on one of the hottest days of the year because that's exactly who Arizona teachers are. Antonia had said in her live shot, a lot of water is provided out there. People are helping each other get through the streets. Air-conditioned school buses are also out there to help people who need a break from the heat. 90 degrees and sunny right now. Hashtag red for ed. That was sent in by Sean Tingle. And then Jen Brewer, we talked with the former governor just a little bit ago, and she tweeted out this. Just take a look at the size of that crowd. It's just stunning enormity that you see thousands and thousands of protesters. She's tweeted out, Sleeping Giant is awake at the Capitol today. We want to hear, though, your pictures. We want to hear your comments. Make sure to use the hashtag either Beyond12 or hashtag 12News. But people are continuing to share all of their posts, all their opinions as this continues. We're going on, you know, a couple of hours here live in the studio, but you have to imagine people that were out at 7, 8 o'clock this morning. They have been very active on social media.
It's a long day, Brian. Thanks. We understand that Joe Thomas from the Arizona Teachers United is that right?
Yes, Arizona Education Association. He's the president.
Association is on the stage right now. Let's get you back down to the Capitol and listen in.
Be cool! We are still waiting for an answer. We are waiting. The kids will have to wait. We love you, kids. We're here fighting for you.
Now, there's been talk that possibly another rally is possibly tentatively being planned for tomorrow at the state capitol once again. That would be from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. But of course, if we get more information about this possible rally once again tomorrow, we will bring that to you. Again, we just saw pictures there. More than 50,000 people gathered. We're talking more than 840,000 children in the school system. They are not in school today, and more than 100
and won't be tomorrow,
and won't be tomorrow as well. And more than 100 school districts and charter schools, they are closed. So the ramifications of this is enormous. And this movement also started, some of it started yesterday even. This whole stand up, stand out was happening all throughout the valley in little pockets from Northwest Valley to South Phoenix to Scottsdale, Sky 12. We were live yesterday bringing you pictures of teachers standing on corners, just making their voices heard. So, you know, they just want to raise this awareness that they are not going to stand for this.
It's going to take a united front, not only from the teacher side, but from the legislative side. And the governor wants to get this done. Everybody needs to come together and put their own agendas aside and work this out for the better, for the good of the kids, for the good of the students, and for the good of our state. Let's go to Bram Resnick, who's standing by at the Capitol.
Hey, Mark. Yeah, the crowd dissipating right now. It looks like they plan to be back at 11 o'clock tomorrow. I just want to bring you up to date on a few things that you may have reported already. The Arizona Senate has gavelled out of session. They are done till Monday. What that tells us is they don't believe the House of Representatives, Republicans there, have agreed on the governor's plan, because the Senate has agreed. They, I'm told, are ready to vote yes on the governor's plan for teacher raises. Again, as I said earlier, the real problem is with the Republicans in the House of Representatives who have not agreed yet. They haven't nailed down those votes. The other thing I want to bring you up to date on, what Governor Brewer said on our air just a few minutes ago is astonishing. You have a Republican former governor criticizing the governor who succeeded her in very specific terms, saying Doug Ducey mishandled this rebellion, this crisis. That's unprecedented. You know, the Republican rule, the Reagan rule is speak no evil of fellow Republicans. Jan Brewer just crushed it. So I'm still shaking my head over that one. Just to bring you up to date on what the state of play is here, as I said a minute ago, the House of Representatives has several holdouts. Their concern is Governor Ducey's 20% raise over 3 years drains too much money from the rest of the budget and maybe from some other priorities. There's also concern his hopes for revenue growth might be a little bit too aggressive. This gets back to one of the objections of the teachers who say there is no sustainable funding source. There is no dedicated funding source the governor has. He's just relying largely on growth. Arizona, as we all well know, is a boom and bust state. And one downturn and there might not be raises there for teachers in a year or 2 or 3. And a reminder, this legislature would have to vote on those teacher raises every year under Governor Doug Ducey's plan. So holdouts over there in the House, it is possible the governor could go till Monday without agreement on the plan, without a yes vote on the plan. There's one way out, and that is for the governor to call a special session of the legislature. I think Governor Brewer referred to this, you know, telling him to get tough, man up, and deal with this. Governor Ducey, sorry, Neil Diamond's competing for airtime here. Governor Ducey could call a special session, call lawmakers back tomorrow to work on this, to pass his plan and an entire state budget tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. That's a possibility, maybe a remote one, I can't say for sure, but that is one way this could get done. But right now, things are not looking very good. It looks to me politically, the teachers have the upper hand right now. Back to you guys.
All right, Bram Resnick live at the state capitol, part of our coverage team of this historic day in Arizona. Governor Brewer on the air, really second-guessing in many ways what's happened. And the Senate adjourning, gaveling out until Monday. Bram believes it's because they have accepted the deal. The governor wasn't so sure.
Exactly.
And the legislature clearly doesn't have a deal. So we might see a special session.
We hope.
The governor was in the studio with us at about 11:30 today. He said that he was going back down to work and talk to legislators on both sides of the aisle to try to hammer out a deal. We'll see what happens. The crowd size, we understand from Phoenix Police, has grown from an estimate of 50,000 to 60,000. So that gives you some idea of the enormity and the passion of this group.
Absolutely. Again, we appreciate your time for staying with us on 12 News. You can bet that we are on top of this with our live team of reporters out in the field, as well as Sky 12. We will continue our coverage on this teacher walkout all throughout our shows tonight, starting at 4 o'clock, first at 4. So we hope to see you then. And in the meantime, feel free to please follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, on Twitter, and we will have the best team coverage on this whole teacher walkout.
Time. And for more information, everyone, just head to heritagesquarephoenix.org. And up next, a new warning for kids about a popular sport. Details right after the break. And later, a classic song and dance move. It's out again. We have much more coming up.
Next live, Adam Sandler, Josh Holloway, and Tuesday, it's the one-year anniversary of Kelly and Ryan.
I need my Ryan Seacrest.
Tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Oh, it's getting close. Spencer's TV and Appliance is about to hit their 3 millionth customer. And as you know, one lucky customer will win the $10,000 kitchen package. You already get their lower prices on all Whirlpool appliances. And for the final days, Spencer's has additional savings on every brand throughout the store. Time is running out. The 3 millionth customer